Meeting. Thank you. Let's call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of August 29th. We'll have the roll call and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please call a roll.
Hathaway.
Present.
Palmer, absent. Flintoff, present. Brazeau, absent. Carey. Present. Noel. Present. Riser.
Present.
We have quorum.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is adoption of the agenda. I know there's a couple of changes, and then I'll open it up for further corrections or additions or whatever. So I'd like to move item G2, that's the PAAW Palmer AA Warehouse Detail Engineering Review, from consent to unfinished business. Well, it's the sort of second half of their application for their site plan.
Right.
It's all of a piece.
Yeah, and we used to do that. John pointed out that technically is not unfinished business by pointing out the Robert's Rules of Order a few weeks ago. And
Is it
so
new?
it would be new
It would be
business
new.
Okay.
under.
Well, it
under-
doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll put it
Okay.
under new business.
And I have a new business matter.
And well, just before we do that, we wanted to add the authorization for Richard Hughes as interim utilities director also to new business.
Okay.
And those of you who printed out your agenda early, H2 and H3 are combined into H2. And
There's an H3. There's an H3.
well, if you printed out your agenda early on, there was a separate,
It was
now it's been folded
Simply just a
into H2.
report. It's an attachment of regular report.
And trustee Rice,
Oh, I wanted to make a change too.
well, we'll do
Okay.
him first and then you.
I would like to move up J1, the Connecting Communities grant application to as soon as it can be considered, whether that's before consent agenda or immediately right after consent agenda, because we have a guest here and a presentation to accommodate her so she doesn't have to leave. And I'm talking about Anna Cohn, the director of the PPAP.
So specifically, you want it moved where?
Head of consent,
Right after consent,
or right after consent?
because
agenda?
consent should be quick, right?
Right, okay, so consent agenda and then item J1 prior to reports. Right, and is that it?
You know what? Yeah, but that's right after consent. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Noel.
Yep. I want to pull payment of bills from the consent agenda so that we can discuss it in more detail.
New business.
So that would go
Yes.
to new business.
Is that new business number 4 now?
So under new business, if I have this correct, we now have G1, G2, and a new authorization of Rich Hughes as interim utility director position.
Well, if we kept them in the same order, I suppose, yes. G1, G2, and then a new item,
Let's just call it J2.
J2. Okay, anything else?
I just wanted to note for everyone, not a change to the agenda, but I just want to thank Mary Gillis for her hard work on the 2 newsletters up against a tight deadline. And note for the board and the public that the most recent drafts of the newsletter were updated this afternoon, were emailed, are in that public packet. But I want to note that she recommends that they're still good to go on consent because the changes are not substantive, but I wanted to bring that information to the table. make sure everybody's comfortable keeping them there.
Thank you. Is there any further comment on the agenda? Is someone prepared to move the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Riser,
Support?
support by Flintoff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Agenda is approved as changed. That brings us to communications to the Board of Trustees. Trustee Noel.
I had a comment. Included in the communications to the board is a 4-page letter from our auditors. And it was addressed to all board members. Board members were asked to communicate any questions or concerns with the auditors. And I wanted to let people know I have done so because I think I have a fiduciary duty to do so when I have concerns. So I had a lengthy discussion with David Pelisak and satisfied with it. So just wanted to encourage other people to consider doing the same.
I had a conversation with David too. It was lengthy and I brought up a lot of my concerns.
I noted, I formally talked with them today, been talking to them throughout the audit process. They are on track to still submit on time. Staff and Maynard are clicking through the last couple of open items, so it's gonna be close, but we expect to still be on time. But I do recommend anybody on the board who has not yet responded to their letter to do so in short order.
Any other comments on communications to the Board of Trustees? Let's move on to public comment. This is a time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of the Board of Trustees. We hear first from those who are present in Township Hall, and then we turn to those who are participating remotely. Please come up and have a seat at the table for your turn.
I have the microphone ready for you.
And,
Oh, that would be better.
oh,
Because
All right.
that way people can hear both sides.
I thought he wanted everybody to come up and say.
oh, just in turn.
So, and John, and for the public, just so you all know, one thing about the acoustics of this room, it may work fine to use that mic and speak here. Kathleen, sometimes when we have a bunch of people in the back, they have trouble hearing. And so the acoustics can work better, people standing over there. So just holler if you can't hear Kathleen.
You just stand at the podium.
I think that would work better for everybody in the back.
And that microphone works best if you speak directly straight into it.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of these meetings. I think I have
I was
an appreciation.
offering that for everyone, not just for you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Can you folks hear me okay?
Trustee Riser,
Okay,
will you serve as our timekeeper, please?
Was it? Hi, my name is Kathleen Brandt. I'm a Scio resident and very informed citizen. I stole that from Pam Boyd. I read the letter from Plant Moran regarding the audit. It appears that Plant Moran is highlighting issues with the audit process. They make a point of stating that the supervisor was notified in May of the procedures. We are now 30 days from the deadline for filing, and I'm concerned Mr. Hathaway and others are playing games again with the audit this year. Another significant thing, which is really what I wanted to talk about, it came to my attention that Sandy Egler is under criminal investigation currently, and that this has been going on for quite some time. Also, the treasurer and the supervisor are fully aware of the investigation. I have a question for this board. What is this board doing about having this Egler responsible for financial records during this time of investigation? This seems to be illogical, imprudent, worrisome. Those are our tax dollars. We should all be alarmed. And this is on top of all of the errors that have come out of the treasurer's office in the past few years. You all know what they are. While the deputy treasurer has been there and the treasurer, we've seen missing tax levies. We've seen fighting about fire station dollar funds. It's ridiculous what's coming up. And why is this person, if under investigation, still handling our records? I want to mention that it seems that LASA, the Lock Alpine Sanitary Authority, handled this situation quite quickly and effectively. They took immediate action. Why is this board dragging their feet on taking action? Thank you.
Who's next for public comment? Please come on up.
Try to stay on task, so I wrote everything down that I'm going to say. I have a few attachments here, so I'll share them with you. Follow me.
Thank you, sir.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. No, I got it. If anybody else wants to read along, where does it go with the music? There's extra copies here. My name is John Boyle. I'm a 43-year resident of the township, 35-year commercial investor in the township. This letter will memorialize my comments before the board today regarding the board's proposal for a 233% increase from the 1.35 mils to 4.5 mils, the authorization to have that increase in the fire safety millage. It's covered on the ballot already. Apparently, the board has decided to go through with it. So attached to this commentary is a copy of the ballot. I'll expand on my comments that I've made in the past two meetings and related comments from others in Scio Town Hall meetings on August 8th. Before moving on, I will point out that to the best of my knowledge, this board has not addressed a single concern raised by me at the public hearings, at the prior public hearings on June 13th and August 8th. I've yet to see anything from this board that has a smidgen of meaningful financial analysis. To go to the young lady's comments who was here before me, I've never seen any financial analysis from this board, or quite frankly, the prior boards. I don't see anything that says there's internal auditing going on, that there's internal controls, that there's competitive bidding for projects. All things that I look at when I work on a problem company to see if I'm going to be dealing with fraud. When there aren't internal audits, when there aren't internal controls, when there aren't internal competitive biddings, and there aren't safety rails, in my experience, 100% of the time you have fraud. Let me discuss the process for you. Let's suppose that you're the CEO of a conglomerate. And the board of one of your subsidiaries claims that it needs an additional $4.3 million per year, adjusted for inflation, to continue to function. The particulars are as follows. The subsidiary has given you a detailed, has not given you detailed historical financial reports, has given you no detailed financial reports, has given you no detailed pro forma financial reports, explaining what they're going to do with all this money. Over the last 10 years, the cost to operate this subsidiary has gone up at 10 times the increase in the consumer price index, despite the fact that over the last 10 years, the subsidiary's customer base has gone down by 10%, 10.5%. The $4.3 billion budget increase, an increase of 233%, raising the cost of operations from 2.1 million to 6.4 million. Despite a declining customer base, the subsidiary would like an additional 17,250 square foot production facility, adding $11,440,000, $664 square foot. I'm going to comment on that.
Mr. Boyle, you're at 3.5 minutes.
Okay, well, can I go on? Because I spent a lot of time and I'm trying to stay on topic.
I
as best I can.
appreciate that you did. It's not up to me, it's up to the body, but we.
Okay, well, I'd like to have the body suggest that I would like to stay on task.
I'd be okay with another minute or two.
Well,
But you're on page
another minute or
104.
two. The time of this board is so valuable that I can't have another 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes to go over what I've spent a lot of time developing.
Yes. I think you should.
That's a
have
big
it.
problem for this
I
board.
do.
I'm just pointing it out. If
I understand your
No, I
rule.
appreciate it, John, and
I'm
it's
not
it's
ruling, I'm
important.
inquiring, and I'm okay with you giving extra time.
I'm gonna read through as fast as I can.
Thank you.
All right,
There's no difference between what I just described and what's going on with the millage for the fire safety. As I stated in my previous in your previous 2 town hall meetings, this board has not made the case, and in fact has not even attempted to make the case for any increase in the fire safety millage, much less an increase of 233%. Where is the analysis that makes this case? In the business world, that analysis would be front and center. In the normal course of financial affairs, a request of this magnitude would be accompanied by a benchmark study of similarly positioned municipalities, comparing costs and cost components, firefighters, support staff, et cetera, for Scio Township and other townships. You would show 4 to 5 years of detailed income statements to say what happened, where did the money go over the last 4 or 5 years, or the last 10 years, while the costs went up at 10 times the rate of inflation. The bottom line is negative. There will be an analysis to determine why it was negative and corrective actions would be taken. Documentation of all revenue would be properly collected, and you would have clear tracks on all costs. Then you would show the additional revenue and additional operations going forward, and you'd have 4 to 5 years of pro forma financial statements. On a related note, I have the following questions and comments regarding the board's claim that a second fire station is needed. Did the township's financial office conduct a benchmark study comparing the number and the size of the fire stations for comparable municipalities? I think the answer is no. What were the metrics upon which the decision was made? The stated cost for the second fire station is $490,000. Did the township obtain competitive bids for this project? What are the parameters upon which the decision was made to go with this particular cost? Who were the competing bidders and what were the particulars of the bids? If no bids were obtained, why not? What was the basis for the decision to single source the design and the construction? Also, a review of the RS Means Consulting square foot cost shows that the average fire station cost today is $275 per square foot. This cost is $655 per square foot, 141% higher than the average. Why is that? Why is this one more than 2.5 times as expensive as the average? I have concerns, but they've already been addressed on the costs here at the township, and they were addressed in the township's auditor's memorandum to the township. Now, if you, Christie, if I could get you to put up some statistics, I'm gonna give you some statistics about this township's performance. The consumer price index in the last 10 years, from 2012 to 2022, went up by 26%. The cost of running Scio Township's government went up by 84%. More than 3 times the increase in the CPI. As far as the fire department revenue goes, the special assessment revenue went up by 100%, 4 times the rate of inflation. The total fire department revenues went up by 120%, 5 times the rate of inflation. The fire department expense went up by 250%, 10 times the rate of inflation. And the township's population went from 19,575 to 17,526. So it went down by 10%. So the population is going down. Where did all these huge increases, vastly above cost of living, where did all that money go? And now we want an additional 233% increase in the budget? Got a real problem with that. So it begs the following questions. Given that over the last 10 years, CPI went up by 26%, and the cost of running the fire department went up by 250%, where did all that money go? It went from 600,000 to 2.1 million. Where did it go? There's no financial statements for the fire department to show you. That's what I was commenting on since the first time I came up here. To plan an effective audit, we must identify significant risks. This is a comment from the auditor, so I'll give it to those who don't have a copy of the audit letter. To plan an effective audit, we must identify significant risks of misstatement in the financial statements. Because management is in a unique position to perpetuate fraud due to its ability to manipulate accounting records and prepare fraudulent financial statements by overriding controls that otherwise appear to be operating effectively. Generally accepted auditing standards require that we always consider this to be a significant risk. So they're already addressing the concern that there's fraud here. In my business, I deal in fraud all the time. When I'm called in to turn around a municipality, an NGO, a company, individuals who are in trouble, and there's no controls within the internal controls in the organization, whatever the organization is, and there's no internal audits ongoing, and there's no financial analysis. My experience is 100% of the time, I will find fraud.
Sir, you're at 11 minutes. Could you wrap it up, please?
Okay, yep, I know what I'm saying. Anyway, bottom line, this board's proposal represents nothing less than taxpayer abuse and deserves nothing less than a resounding defeat at the ballot box. Finally, let me make a point. And I made this point in my prior comments. I will suggest that voting against unjustified massive 233% increase in millage after 10 years of increases at 10 times the rate of inflation should not in any way be construed as disrespect or disregard for this township's first responders. Fiscal management, sound fiscal management does not disregard for the employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next for public comment?
Everybody. I have a few small comments that hopefully will be a little bit shorter, Mr. Boyles. Couple of quick questions. One, I do know that we still have a few more days on utilities director position. Hopefully we'll be able to wrap that up and hire a candidate in September. Look forward to seeing who that is. Hope Rich does a great job. He's been with us a while, so I'm sure he will in the interim. My next question, something that Kathleen said, and it sort of was great that our attorney's here this evening. I believe, just as I'm sure most all of the rest of us do, that someone is innocent until they're proven guilty. However, if I had someone in my organization that was accused of a crime, especially a crime that involved control over funds, I would place that person on internal leave or suspension until the criminal matter was resolved, whether it's unpaid or paid. I'm not a labor attorney. I don't pretend to be one. That's why we have attorneys. But I think that's something that really bears strong consideration. I would expect the same of anyone else in any other position in any other organization, be it government or a private entity. If you're accused of something, you're found innocent, perfect. If you're found guilty, you're found guilty. Just something to consider. Did have a question as far as, or an idea rather, from Mr. Boyle's comments. I think one of the things we could possibly do, I know there's limits to what the township can do as far as advocacy, but is there some things we could have Plant Moran work on, specifically around his comments about financial modeling and about financial reports and financial records from the fire department?
We met on that today.
And that, I think that would certainly be a step in the right direction. Maybe it doesn't totally address all of his comments, but at least we can get somewhere where we can get some hard data, some hard evidence about where some of the money went, especially involving that interfund loan that was its own problem in the past. All right, everybody, appreciate your time. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Jackson. I'm a 28-year resident of Scio Township. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Parkwood Condominium Association. Perhaps not everybody there. I don't represent leadership. I'm just a resident in that complex. We've been talking to the board since this program or this development has been proposed. And I've come up and spoken about keeping the character of the community to the same type of scale that the community is right now. There's supposed to be a corridor of calm between Liberty and downtown Scio, which is Park Road. I think a good analogy is, or not an analogy, but Parkwood residents are not against development of the property next door to us. We just are against the scale, and the scale of it. It's just too big for that amount of space. I'd like to give the analogy now that remember when University of Michigan put those big fake letters on top of the football stadium and everybody was in such an uproar that it just cheapened the area and it just wasn't Michigan. Well, if you guys allow this development to go in as it's proposed, it's going to be those big, ugly letters in an area that it shouldn't be. And so I know it's gonna boil down to legalities. It's gonna come down to the law. If they need variances, then don't approve their current proposal. If they meet them all, I guess that all of our talk has been for naught because they're meeting the legal requirements. But I'm putting it in the board's ear that it's okay to deny the current program or the current development proposal if it stays and if they don't meet their legal requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good evening, I'm Bill Doty, 465 Woodgrove, Parkwood resident. Last October, you all passed a resolution unanimously to consider passing SP 21021, the Albury Grove bill, and back to the planning, or to the planning commission. It's been 10 months since that resolution was approved. And a few months after that, on March 28th of this year, I provided 7 detailed reasons why taking such an action would be a good idea because of the number of changes that have happened since it was proposed well over a year and a half ago. Basically asking tonight, when will this resolution be put on your agenda? How does it get on that agenda so that at least it can be discussed? Thank you.
Thank you.
A criminal investigation? How long has that been going on? Commission and not be surprised. Supervisor, For 5 minutes as the editor of Scio Community Newsletter.
You can have 11.
I don't think I need 11. Thank you, though. Pam Boyd, an informed Scio resident, Scio Community Newsletter. As I was researching my public comments, the TV show Whose Line came to mind. You know, the tagline, everything is made up and points don't matter. From the Scio Township newsletter in the packet tonight, and from Joyce Parker, she points out that Steve Margoski and our utilities director and Howard Longbridge, I'm gonna mispronounce his name, I'm sure, our building maintenance manager are both retiring, and that a firm is providing finance director services on an interim basis. Thank goodness about the finance director services. And I want to say bon voyage to Steve and Howard. Then there's that letter that everybody's talking about tonight from, in that letter, also in the packet from the treasurer, she says, things are going well in the treasurer's area. It doesn't seem to me that everything is going well. Didn't our township send out tax payments to various county authorities only for Scio Treasurer's office to ask for overpayments to be returned? How could the treasurer's office not know the correct amount? And wasn't it mentioned in a recent meeting that a person in the treasurer's office was attending both sides, as in sending out those checks, and then when the corrections came back in, she was also making those corrections. So it's no surprise to read the auditor's report that has all kinds of red flags. And I'll read this again because it's worth hearing. He spoke it earlier. Because management is in a unique position to perpetrate fraud due to its ability to manipulate accounting records and prepare fraudulent financial statements by overriding controls that otherwise appear to be operating effectively, generally accepted auditing standards require that we always consider this to be a significant risk. In addition, we identified the following significant risk of mismanagement: ability to maintain appropriate duty segregation with limited number of township staff, proper recording of capital asset additions, including retainage accruals. You know, if you hire a builder and you pay him half up front, you need to remember how much you've paid him and how much you have left when the job is done. Adequate procedures and controls surrounding receipts and deposits, reconciliations, and timeliness, including proper preparation and review of monthly bank reconciliations, proper accounting and reporting of tax collection fund fiduciary responsibilities. Skipping forward in this document, under information from you, the board, relevant to our audit, it continues in its letter to you, the attitudes, awareness, and actions concerning the detection or possibility of fraud, including whether the Board of Trustees has knowledge of any actual suspected or alleged fraud affecting the township. This audit report does not say things are going well in the treasurer's area. In addition, when we look at that auditor's report, we need to understand the issues of the old members of the early 2020 board, where they all voted against the clerk. Remember the stupidity regarding meeting minutes where it was 6 months before they finally understood their OMA mistakes? From a May 10th, 2022 meeting minutes, note, Clerk Flintoff was absent. This is when the nasty things happened. J2, discussion, only administrator Riley's resignation, the next steps. A motion by Hathaway, supported by Courteau, to hire Jim Murdy as interim township administrator to authorize the supervisor to sign the employment agreement prepared by the township's labor and employment attorney. The motion discussion. Hathaway said the township was lucky to have the available seasoned employee, yada, 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 yada. And Murdy was available to start immediately. And the effective date of the employment agreement will be Wednesday, May 11th of that year. Trustee Knoll said she was hearing this idea for the very first time. Long story short, this move stink.
And in the next few days, the clerk lost her BSNA access. That access has not completely been resolved. Continuing, meeting minutes from May 24th, 2022, motion by Flintoff, support by Knoll to amend and approve the agenda as follows. Add the authorization of bidding and award for energy management improvement and the authorization of temporary township finance officers staff contract, PM GAP or Plant Moran government accounting professional. Hathaway supported the First Amendment, but not the second. He said he thought the issue of temporary finance officer was a settled matter. Trustee Knoll noted that prior Administrator Rowley had commented extensively on the lack of internal checks and balances, that there were deficiencies noted in last year's audit, and she expressed support for a discussion regarding internal checks and balances. It should be noted that this is at least the second time in over 2 years the supervisor and his group have shut down hiring of financial staff. The definition of abominable, and I had to pronounce that a couple of times, is causing moral revulsion and very bad or unpleasant. The guidance of the supervisor to this board has been abominable at best. There have been so many bad decisions made by some on this board and previous boards. This board needs, without fail, to do its duty to right the wrongs set forth by those previous board members. You newer board, you owe it to the residents to reverse the damage that is following this current township board like an anchor around your necks. You can start by giving back the clerk her complete BSNA duties that she had prior to David Rowley leaving office. You swept it under the rug. Get off your butts and do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Is there anyone else present in the hall who would like to speak during public comment?
And I just want to note one thing, our rules of order advise members of the board that if we use electronic devices like texting, that we not text about meetings. I'm not suggesting anybody is, I just want everybody in the, no, I know, I just want everybody in the public to know that if anybody happens to be looking at their phone, looking like they're texting, that we're not texting about the meeting proceedings. And just want to remind my colleagues about that.
Although I did make an arrangement to alert Doug Luan when the planning item is coming up. Is there anyone who wants to speak during, speak during public comment remotely?
Right now, there are no hands. Well, hold on.
That's all you had to say, Christine.
Next.
First one to speak is Alan Verbano, followed by Ann Streeter. Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, you want to move on to Ann Streeter, we can come back to Ann.
Ann Streeter, go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Ann Streeter, and I live at 7869 Scio Church Road. And I am just talking about the wedding barns on Scio Church Road, which I have talked to before. I just want to inform you, I have given you information as well as some documents, as well as emails and resources for you to do your due diligence about the two wedding barns. If you could please read through it. I think it's very important information for you to do to make your decisions. And there is also another piece I will send you, probably tomorrow on it as well. So keep your eyes open to your mailbox. And I appreciate all the time and effort that you put in into making this decision. It's something very important to us neighbors. And also, I'd like to invite any of the board members, and I have previously asked you before, if any of the board members would like to come Saturday evening and come to our house, I would welcome you to come. So you have my information and please just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So a party at Ann's house. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Anyone else that wants to speak? Next up will be Rob Pattinson, followed by Jonathan Greenberg. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident. First of all, thank you, John, for the email. I got it just before the meeting. I really appreciate you responding to my email from last time. Thank you very much for that. On the Scio Community News YouTube channel, we have 365 videos posted. We've got 21,000 views. As of this month, we have spent $154,238.08 on the supervisors Foster Swift, Mike Homier, personal attorney. I will remind you again, that represents 1.5 firefighters, and we are currently short 3 firefighters in our fire department. That also represents 18 months worth of a finance director, of which we have not had a finance director in all that time. I would submit that that money would have been better spent in other places. Manager Parker, the planners website requests that the planners reports be included in the agenda packet as a normal report that we get from the other departments, because far more people read the agenda packets than will find that planner's report on the website. I would also like to recommend, Trustee Reiser, you could take this to the Planning Commission. I'd like to recommend the planner's report also be included in the agenda packet for the Planning Commission. And then tonight, could we have a manager's report? We've asked for those before. I don't see that in the agenda packet. And then thank you, Steve Wagowski, for your service to Scio Township. We have appreciated you having you as our utilities chief. And then Township Attorney Fink, I am very glad you're there tonight. You and Trustee Reiser and Trustee Knoll, I hope you will all look at the party barn issue. I will remind you that the Misty Valley, or the Misty Party Barn, is 16 acres. There's no farming taking place there. Therefore, under the agritourism law, it's an illegal business. And then on the Valley Party Barn, owned by the same family, that is on 27 acres, about 20 acres of which is farmed, but there's no way that the party barn is supplemental to 20 acres of crops. Therefore, that's illegal. And then I'd like to point out that the Valley Party Barn is 25 feet from the side property line. And the law says that any agritourism business needs to be 200 feet from the side property lines. So I would hope that the 3 of you will get together and look at the party barn issue. We have had residents who have been suffering with that party barn issue for 13 years. And we finally have people in place, I hope, who will help them get some resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Next up is Jonathan Greenberg. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, folks. Yeah, I only need 10 minutes, 3 minutes for comments and 7 minutes of my best karaoke. I have some very video share along with. Okay, so I'm sorry, I got an echo here and I can't hear. So I just wanted to comment on the earlier. No, it's not your fault that I have an echo. It was my headset. I want to comment on the issue that was raised earlier. Again, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. within our country, our great set of laws that give us that freedom. Having said that, when folks, that doesn't mean we are free from consequences from our actions. The law is one thing, but you as a BOT, you as the trustees have a responsibility to act when you see something like this occurring. I'm not suggesting that you take any drastic action. I think it's totally reasonable and commonplace in any business or government to put somebody on administrative or depending on the stage of the investigation, to put somebody on administrative leave for being involved in what appears to be both from an investigatory as well as the letter we received from Plant Moran that's being discussed tonight. Looks like we're in a load of trouble over the actions and given all the other past concerns that we've heard about our audits. This is all very troubling, and I really hope that this evening you can find a way of ensuring that no more malfeasance occurs, if any has to this date. And you also might want to think about restoring the I haven't said it in a while, but restoring the rightful ownership and management of the books and records to the township clerk, as has been said over and over and over again, almost as many times as we've said we need a finance director, and transparency in local government. But so far we got none of the three. So try to get some of that done tonight, please. Thank you. Or I will be back with karaoke at the end of the meeting, public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Anyone else that wants to speak at public comment? Alan, you're still out there. I don't see his name anymore.
Okay.
So,
Well,
I wanted to respond to something that was said.
please go ahead, Trustee Noel.
The comment about our population decreasing in Scio, Mr. Boyle. When Dexter became a city, Scio lost over 3,000 residents. I think it was closer to 4,000. And after that point, the population in Scio has been steadily increasing again. Correct. So just so you're aware of that.
I just went to the records.
Okay.
Going back 10 years. And that doesn't show the whys and the wherefores. It does show what the population is. And I gave you the numbers for 2012 and 2022.
You can't
So
be
that's from the Census Bureau.
I'm also just quickly, Rob Pattinson, if you look at the meeting packet now, you'll find the planner's report. It was added kind of later, so it may not have been there when you looked, but it's there now. With that, let's move on to approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. First is minutes of the regular meeting of August 15th. Noticed one or two things on page 11, at the bottom. It says, this is a paraphrase of a comment from me. And it says, or changing the parks, preserves and pathways letterhead. I think it was, or changing the letterhead. I think there was something else said about parks, preserves and pathways, but I got mushed together in a way that implies that it was the letterhead and it was not. So I would just remove those so that it makes.
Which page is that, Will?
11.
Page 11, down at the bottom, just delete parks, preserves and pathways.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I noticed is it says the meeting adjourned at 10:45. I think it was actually 9:45 when it adjourned.
Okay,
And
I'll double check my notes and verify.
it was memorable to have ended so early.
Right.
All
And I
right,
just had one spelling correction I was gonna make on page 6. It's Maynard, Casterison with an Maynard with an E, not an O, so I'll correct that as well.
I would move approval of the minutes with those changes reflected in them.
moved by Riser,
I'll support.
support by Noel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes of the 15th are approved. Next set of minutes is from our special meeting with public hearing on August 8th.
Just one change,
Okay,
just simply that it is a public hearing and not a special meeting, so just change the heading of it so that it would be recorded as it was called and posted. It's a public hearing. It wasn't technically a special meeting.
oh, okay.
And I have no other changes.
I would move approval of those minutes with that change.
So would you change special meeting to public hearing
Yeah.
throughout or
No, just at the top.
just at the
Because
top?
it just was a public hearing
Okay,
and not a special meeting.
all right. So moved by Riser, support by Noel. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those minutes are approved as corrected. Finally, we have the draft minutes of the special meeting of August 10th. This was a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the Downtown Development Authority Board. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, is someone prepared to move adoption of
I would
those?
move adoption, or I would second Jillian's.
Doesn't matter.
So moved by Carrie, support by Riser. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those minutes are approved. That brings us to consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda and ask for a roll call vote because it asks for authorizing money.
Well, actually, the payment of bills was removed.
Well, first,
So we've got,
contract.
So what's left, what's left on the consent
Yeah.
agenda? Let's,
John's actually right. If I could, John, suggest a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, which includes G3, G4, and G5.
Okay.
I would
please-
second that.
Okay, please call the roll.
All right, per our rules, it's my turn to start. Flintoff, yes. Carrie?
yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Riser?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Consent agenda adopted.
That brings us to item J1, which is Connecting Communities Grant Application. And we have with us this evening our Director of Parks, Preserves, and Pathways, Anna Cohn. Please come on out. I don't know if you want it, you don't have to use the microphone if you don't want to.
I can move over, Hannah, whatever.
Yeah, and Anna, at the table's fine as well. It really is just when the hall fills with people, it gets harder for people in the back to hear.
All right. Will, were you done? Should I go ahead?
Yeah,
Okay.
please, go ahead. This is your agenda item. You introduce it.
Great. So, I'm here because I wanted to bring to the board the opportunity to apply for a Connecting Communities grant. This is a grant that has helped fund Z-Road Pathway in the past in 2018. And so we know that it's a project that the Z-Road Pathway qualifies for and qualifies quite well for. And the application due date is the 31st, so it's really coming up. There has been some additions to the packet as of today. So I handed those out earlier. I'm happy to answer questions. I recognize some of them might be answered in the new material that maybe you didn't get a chance to see, so feel free to ask your questions and I'll do my best to answer them.
Could you summarize the changes that are reflected in the materials that you just handed out?
Maybe just walk us through the documents since we're just getting them.
Sure, so I'll go through first the information that's been there since you got the packet, and then I'll talk about changes. So I'll share from the Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation website. Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation Commissions is a proponent of the development of non-motorized trails within the community. And so that's why they have this opportunity to provide funding for construction projects in Washtenaw County. I also have included the application itself, not filled out, just for you all to look over. It basically asks about the project. It asks about connectivity, which is a big, what's the word? It's like highly sought after in these type of projects. They'll be looking for connectivity. So we'll ask what properties are being connected by this project. And we know the zebra pathway connects Township Hall, it connects fire department, it connects Burns Stokes Reserve. It connects eventually to the B2B. So there's a lot of connectivity in this project. And then I guess a little more background is that in that grant application, you've all looked at it. It asks for a summary of potential funds in addition to potential match. And so now we're getting into what's been added today, and thank you for bearing with me with the late additions. I didn't anticipate there being questions on the application. When I put it into the agenda initially, I figured I'm asking to apply to a grant, and I've applied to grants before working here, and I was able to kind of bring it to you and you said, go for it, good luck. This is a different situation, I'm realizing, because of the question of match. And so I'll first go over potential funding sources, and then I'll go over match. So potential funding sources. We have confirmed MEDC dollars. We have 855,000 left of the 900,000 towards phase 5. And so we're talking about phase 5. We also have MEDC dollars, 710,000 MEDC dollars out of 750 authorized for phase 6. So this would require board authorization to move those funds, allowing them to be used for phase 5. So I'll say it would require board authorization. The funds are there for the zebra pathway. In addition, there is 1.7 million in the Parks, Preserves, and Pathways budget currently. And then lastly, we know that there's the Parks and Pathways millage. So the voters approved the millage in August 2020. And it's currently generating upwards of 900,000 a year as of this fiscal year. So those are potential funding sources for ZEEB Phase 5. This grant asks, what are your funding sources for the project? So I've listed those in the application. This grant also asks, will your organization be able to provide a match? So it's my understanding that when you provide a match, your application looks a lot better because they don't want to be funding the entire project. They want to know that you're putting funds into the project as well. Looking at the financial situation of the Parks, Preserves, and Pathways Department, looking at the budget numbers, knowing that we have that millage that comes in every year, I have proposed that we say there's a potential $600,000 expenditure from the Parks and Pathways Millage Fund. And in that arena of this application, that's where the questions came up, which I understand why. I'll say that's why there are these last minute additions, and that's why I'm here to really answer any questions you have. Yeah.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there questions?
I just wanted to know, Joyce, where are you at on this in terms of your assessment recommendation?
Well, in reference to my recommendation, I think that if the funding is available,
we should consider submitting the application for the grant, recognizing that there isn't a commitment for the total project cost at this point in time. But if for some reason the board or the commission decide to take a different direction, you can always refund the grant. Actually, it's a reimbursement, so you don't actually draw down the money until you actually expend the dollars. So in the event that something occurs and the township decide to take a different direction, you know, you could certainly not continue with the grant or consider some other project for the grant.
And Mariah, have you had a chance, I know yesterday you looked at a previous version, would you take a minute and look at the operative language on the resolve clauses of the new resolution?
Sure. And I don't think I have a copy of the grant. No, I have that. I don't think I have a copy of the grant.
Application? Is this it or is that the criteria? I printed a lot of stuff out on this one.
So, some questions. First of all, thank you, and I know that you did some work just in the last day or so, spurred by some questions that we raised yesterday morning when we sat down. So thank you for your quick work with Joyce on this to improve this. So phase 5, it looks like it's about a $3.2 to $3.5 million project. Okay, ballpark, $3.5 million. And certainly we want to go for grants. I will say what I don't want to do is overcommit ourselves, start something we can't finish, or say, for example, spend too much of the Parks and Pads fund balance so that we can't do our basic operating and maintenance costs, right? Your salaries, the maintenance, all this stuff. I also want to acknowledge that, you know, part of the lack of sufficient qualified finance staff in the township, now we have PM Gap filling in, is that Anna and other department heads haven't had the support to do an analysis of their fund balance. So when you say 1.7, that is your fund balance, it's not your budget. And I share that because that's all the money, right? We need to make sure, take a look at that with some analysis to say, how much of that do you need to keep in your fund balance to make sure that you can meet all the future year obligations, right? We're building a lot of things, maintaining a lot of things, goes to the capital planning. So I know we're gonna get there on that. I just want to acknowledge that it makes it more difficult for you in this position. I would say on the model motion, I would suggest that we could strike the and indicate the board's authorization of a potential expenditure of $600,000 for 2 reasons. 1, it's in the resolution. 2, we only authorize money that's been budgeted for 1 year, and it looks like this $600K wouldn't be until 24, 25, right? So that's kind of a future year. I think that I would be more comfortable if we were striking that from the motion and then working with just the resolution language. And does it need to be 600,000? I'd be so much more comfortable if we, you know, had it be more of a 1-to-1. How did you come up with the 600,000?
I came up with 600,000 after talking with Roy Townsend, who has experience with connecting communities, and he advised me that that type of match number would look attractive.
Okay.
Additionally, after chatting numbers with OHM and with Rebecca, it's pretty clear that we're going to have to use at least up to 600,000 to finish this project. And so it seemed like a safe number. It's over the course of the years up until construction. It seemed like a safe number, knowing that we have 900,000 coming in from the millage each fiscal year.
Okay, and that considers the MEDC grant that we have for phase 5, but not the phase 6 that the board may or may not.
What does consider?
Sorry, I guess I'm just looking at because I think connecting communities would probably be happy to hear that we're matching, you know? I'm wondering, why are we limiting ourselves to millage funds? Why can't we just say 600,000 of other funds?
Oh, because they ask specifically, I'll share the language that they use. They ask specifically for how will this project be funded? List all confirmed and proposed funders, where I wrote about our confirmed grants. And then they said, is your community providing a local match? And so I interpreted that to mean millage funds.
I'd just offer up a local match. I don't know how they define it. I don't know if it means locally provided, locally sourced through grants, right? I don't know, Joyce?
Isn't it gonna come from Parks and Pathway though, realistically? Isn't that where the money would come from? Sorry,
go
if I
ahead.
cut you off, I apologize.
No, you go ahead.
But,
Yeah, I did have a question for Joyce. She could answer first and then
okay, I'll
the
let
second
you,
question.
yeah, I know.
Well, I was just going to state, local match would include, the Parks and Pathway millage as well as other funding sources. So, you know, you could very easily say 600,000 of either Parks and Pathway millage funds or
Or
other,
local match.
for a local match.
Yeah, I would support
Yeah.
that. That would give a little more room if you'd be comfortable with that. Would that work for
In
you?
case we get a huge donation.
Yeah,
from
exactly.
someone
I just don't want this
for parks
authorization of $600,000 for one partially funded project.
So can I clarify it?
Yeah.
Joyce, and what you just said, could any of our current other available funding be considered local match? Or are you saying it would have to be a personal donation or the millage?
No, I'm saying when you say local match, it could be funding through the township, or it could be a donation provided to the township that could be used for that purpose.
So like the MEDC grants?
Or
Now,
yes.
PUD,
yeah.
It could be a lot of
PUD would be a
sources.
better example.
Anything we
Yeah,
get.
through a PUD. Like.
Planned
for
unit development when a
community-
zoner.
For community benefit, you could use those dollars.
So I think that kind of catch-all, I'd be more comfortable with that.
do we substitute local matching funds? Or locally matched funds?
Or other local funds. We don't
Are we
have to
talking
say
about the
match.
resolution or are
We're
we
talking about the
resolution.
We're looking at be it further resolved, I assume, at the bottom of page 1.
Yes.
Correct.
That's where I am.
So my proposed change to that, be it further resolved, would be to potentially spend, contribute, whatever, at least 600,000 of Parks and Pathways millage funds or other local funds on the construction of.
Yes, I think
that
that
work?
would work.
Okay, thank you, Joyce.
And do we want to say spend or contribute?
I don't like saying spend.
I don't either.
Sorry. I would say, will potentially allocate.
Yeah.
And you think that matches the grant requirements and is gonna get us over the finish line? And then while you're looking, it may be a dumb question or for the benefit of people out there, what is phase 5 and what is phase 6?
The numbers are a little out of order. Phase 6, I know you all have chatted about, it's over the highway. Phase 5 is on the complete opposite side, by the Huron River.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll go from Park Road over the water, up through what is known as Sweepsters, the lot with all the
So
cars.
5 is the river, because they both have V in it, and 6 is expressway, because they both have X in it.
Nice,
That's what I remember.
that's good, yeah.
Regarding that, so we had it was in your report recently, Will, about the MEDC grant for 6, right? 6. And are we allocating by?
No.
So that question will come to the board after the Parks Preserves Pathways Committee meets in September. They have this on their agenda. At our last meeting, when we talked about this, the board, I don't know if we took a vote on it so much as we just sort of talked it through and all agreed that it was going to come first to the Parks Committee and then come back to us with whatever they recommend.
Okay.
And if I could just know a couple, like, bigger picture things on that is the phase 6 was really about TAP. You know, the general intention of that was really about kind of safe crossing and not the recreational pathway. I mean, kind of some of both. So I'm just, you know, mindful of that. And also that we would also need to consider the ongoing the 5 and the 6 of moving that I would also want, not just that, but also the recommendation of Joyce and Anna. I want to know what the Parks PPP committee thinks, but I really want to know kind of how can we most strategically leverage these different funding sources. So I'd like to know that from Joyce and Anna when you do get a chance to sit down with our finance people.
Sure,
Okay.
trustee Carey.
So I'm feeling a little uncomfortable about all of this. I mean, of course, we want to finish, but just because we're getting all this information at the last minute. And as I said, when I was reading the packet online, the links weren't working. It went to error, you know. So I don't really have the information regarding, now you said the something about the, so I have talked to Washtenaw County Parks and Rec back in 2019 when Will and I had a conversation, and I accidentally found out that we had some grants from the Washtenaw, you know, Recs, and the DNR. So with the 300,000 there, we, from what I understood, was that we did the construction and then they paid us the 300,000. So it was like a, you know, even. DNR was something different where they had matching. So this, I don't know the scope of this grant. I mean, other than what is here, but it doesn't say these are the criteria. And I think you said it was in the link that went to the website, which doesn't work. So that's where I'm feeling uncomfortable. So this is a matching grant. It doesn't have to be a matching grant. We could apply for this grant and they could say, oh, here's $600,000, but you have to do the construction first and we'll pay you back. Or is it, no, this is a matching grant? I just wish I had more information to look at the, you know, it has to be finished within a couple of years. If not, you have to apply for an extension, that type of thing. And none of that is in here. So
yeah, the link that I provided goes to the website that you could find if you just Google Connecting Communities, Washtenaw County. What I can provide for you right now is that in the application, it asks, do you have a local match? And you can say yes or no. And so I brought to you all saying, what if we said we have a $600,000 local match? This is why I think that this is doable. I haven't had financial directing and support in my time here, so I bring that to the table with my recommendation for a $600,000 match. I know that they require that you begin construction by 2024, which we will have begun. No, sorry, it says in 2 years, that'd be 2025, which is our plan to begin construction then, so we'll be on the timeline that they request.
We just have to start it in 2 years, within 2 years of getting the grant.
That is what they have on
And
their
we're not gonna
website.
get the grant for a while if we get it. So we've got, that starts the clock whenever we get that 600K,
Yeah, and then,
300K?
300.
That's what we have.
yeah, I think they have 600,000, but we'd be applying for 300,000 because that's the most that they'll give to one project.
If we get it.
If we get it. And then also to your point, Jillian, about the different grants that we have, and some are matching and some are reimbursement. And this is something else that I have been bringing up, that I am really looking forward to, that financial direction and being able to sit down with a professional and map out these grants and and that, considering since we already have grants going, like that will be a resource that I need. And so this grant would fold in to that project.
And I agree, you need financial support, just like the other departments.
Mhm.
And yeah, we need to do that right away. Okay, yes, thank you.
Trustee No.
Just some general overview questions, like what is the total cost projected to be for phase 5? and phase 6?
So phase 6, as we had dreamed it to be, is really no longer, which I know you all have talked about. And so I don't have a number for us for phase 6 because we won't be running phase 6 as it was planned due to pedestrian. Yeah. But I do have the number for phase 5, and this number is fresh as of today from OHM. So we have a cost between 3.25 and 3.5 million.
Is that in the attack? Is that?
No, just in the cover sheet, bottom.
That she passed
I got
out.
too many. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, John, it's a
The
lot.
details are here
Oh, true.
from OHM
Okay,
for the construction costs.
yeah.
So are we, let's take a higher number. Do we have enough resources in our various funds to fund this after year 1 or year 2? I mean, I don't. This is gonna take several, how long is this gonna take first?
So the construction, you mean? I believe, I just want to make sure I'm saying the right thing here. Yeah, so if you look at page 1 of the agenda item that I handed out at the bottom, you'll see a conceptual estimate provided by OHM. We have construction happening fiscal year 25-26, and you'll see the cost for that year is the highest because that's construction year. And then fiscal year 26-27 would be the end of the project, wrapping up the project.
So fiscal year 25-26 would be over $2 million. And so where would that money come from?
So if you look at the next page where it says summary of funds currently available in bold at the top, I can go through this again. I talk about the grants that we currently have. So an MEDC grant of 900,000, of which we have spent some for preliminary engineering. So we're now at 855,000 of that grant, specifically for phase 5. We also have an MEDC grant for 750,000, which we're now at 710,000 of that grant for phase 6, which will be coming to the board from the Parks Committee and from myself to make available for phase 5 as well. Lastly, we have 1.7 million currently in the Parks Preserve and Pathways fund balance. And then additionally, we have every year the Parks and Pathways millage that comes in at around 900,000.
So if you added everything up and do we have sufficient projected funds? I'm unclear.
So I'll say a few things on that. I can add them up and say how much I believe we have as the Parks Director who hasn't had financial direction this past year. So I don't want to definitively say. I can also say though, that this project predates my coming to the Parks, Preserves and Pathways Department. And I believe that in beginning a pathway, we have responsibility to finish a pathway and connect it to the border-to-border trail so it can actually be a useful project. And a lot of money and a lot of resources and time have been invested in this project. And so because of that, I believe it's important to keep the project going.
Adding those 4 numbers up, the 855, the 710, the 1.7, and the 907.
Those aren't the right numbers.
What are the right numbers? 855, 710, 1.7, and 907. That is 4.16 million. I realize that has to run the old operations, but even if you back off the 900, that's still over $3 million. Or am I wrong on that?
You're right. I think The trouble being that 1.7 is the entire fund balance,
No,
which.
I appreciate that, and we're not gonna blow it all on one project, I get that, there's staff and maintenance and things like that, but.
John, if I could, I mean, I think that, so $3.5 million cost, we know we've got the 900,000 from the MEDC. We hope we very likely have 300,000 from this grant, so that, you know, that, what, 2.3 million remain, right? So I think that the question is, you know, it's just the multi-year planning of it. I agree with you. We shouldn't start a pathway we're not gonna finish. I will also say, and at the beginning, when we established this millage, there was discussion about should we decide how much of this millage we're gonna use toward construction of pathways and what portion are we gonna use towards parks or maintenance? And that was never established, right? And so do I think we'll probably have enough money to finish this? I do, and it comes at a cost. This would be prioritizing this pathway over the development of other parks. It might be over additional staff. You know, it's not gonna be our essential operations, right? We're not gonna say, you know, we're gonna, but the analysis hasn't been done. So I just wanna caution us that if we commit to going for this, like, we're really gonna have to work on identifying additional sources and really commit to having and continuing to have sufficient financial staff to help do this kind of long-term capital planning.
Joyce, you seem to have something you'd like to
Well,
share.
you know, I agree with the clerk as well. The one thing I think we should keep in mind too is almost like you're trying to fundraise for a project. So as you move forward, you may not start with all of the funding. However, if you continue to move forward and you recognize potential funding sources, I think that really establishes the approach for this particular project. Now, again, in the event that you decide at a later date, this project is not viable, then certainly it's a reimbursement. So you haven't actually received the money. You have a commitment. You'll have a commitment if the grant is approved for the $300,000.
Yeah, that's true. That's another fail-safe.
So.
Is there a problem with, I know the application is due in late August, but do we absolutely have to do this right now? What if we took a little more time and got more information?
Is this a yearly grant that we could apply for?
The application is due on the 31st, so the day after tomorrow.
And given that, I'm ready to make a motion and ask for support that we do this. And we're gonna, she's charged with running her budget. She's gonna get the financial help she needs. The voters of Scio Township have strongly supported the pathways. This is a pivotal pathway that we've been envisioning for years, and we just need to do what we can do to get it over the finish line. Whether there's going to be likely additional PUD contributions, whether that's partly for pathways or fire or infrastructure or thing. I mean, I think this is something we can do and something we should do.
Is this a grant that we can apply for every year?
Trustee
It
No.
seems like in 18 that we did, but is this how often is this
This
offered?
would be our second or third one.
You're right that we applied in 2018. I don't know how often this grant is available. Will, are you aware?
I'm not aware. I think each municipality can apply if you receive, let me back up. If a municipality receives one of these Connecting Communities grants, you have to wait at least 3 years before you can apply again. I don't know if it's an annual, I think maybe it is, but this is an opportunity for us to apply for this project now. The downside, I suppose, is that I'm not sure what the downside is actually, because we put in our application. If we get the grant, as Joyce was just clarifying again, it's a reimbursement. So if for some reason the township realized, oh, we don't have enough money, or we're not gonna do this for whatever reason, we simply wouldn't submit for reimbursement.
Well, and just to add one other comment, the project itself will not start until you actually have funding obligated for the project.
Which will be, I mean, currently we just have our engineering obligated.
I think we've used some of funding for engineering, and I think that's it primarily.
Right,
Yeah.
so there'll be another step for this board to consider
Exactly.
authorizing any
There
construction.
may be multiple steps before we get to that point.
Joyce, given your experience in situations like this and kind of the uncertainty that's here, what would your recommendations be to this board?
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, I do think that it makes sense to apply for the grant, because again, you're not going to be starting the project until you actually have the project funded. And if for some reason it's not funded entirely in order to move forward, those dollars then would not be drawn down through the county.
So we have a motion from Riser. Is there support?
What is your motion, Riser? Is it as I suggested we amend? Is it?
Yeah, yes, it would be the amount of motion to adopt the attached resolution as amended, authorizing the Director of Parks, Preserves, and Pathways to apply for a Washtenaw County Connecting Communities Grant to help pay for the design and construction of the Z Road Pathway Phase 5 and to indicate. Period. All right,
That was mine.
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine, because the attached resolution talks about the details.
And for the record, the attached resolution, your motion includes that change as well?
Yeah, it incorporates it by reference, or at least I intend to, yes.
So that would
So
be
that-
in the resolved clause, second resolved clause,
Will
to change it
potentially
to
allocate
allocate and
at
then
least 600K of TMP millage funds or other local funds on the construction.
Does that need to say design and construction?
That's what I wondered just now.
it says design and construction in the prior resolved clause. I don't think it has to say in both resolved clauses.
Okay. But I would move that it do so just for consistency's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it gives us more flexibility, given the lack of detail we have.
Okay, so let's read back that resolved clause again one more time, the second one.
That Scio Township will potentially allocate at least $600,000 of parks and pathway millage funds or other
Other local funds.
other
Other
local
local
funds for the design and construction
Yeah.
on the design and construction.
Of phase 5 of the
Yeah.
Zebra pathway. Okay,
Do we need to say this is a one-time allocation?
I don't
it's not
think
really,
so.
it's not really the allocation, it's sort of a statement of intent.
Okay.
Yeah, because Kathy, for example, like, nothing's gonna change tomorrow with the 600,000, right? Until we actually get a construction bid and authorize something, and then we'll be actually appropriating, assigning the funds.
And just to clarify, because this is something that I learned from Anna, if this is one of the requirements of the grant application is that there be a resolution of support from the municipality. That's why there's a resolution.
Right, I'll also say, I'll support.
Thank you.
Okay, so
And
we
I
have a
just,
motion.
I just want to make one comment that one of the things many things on the finance director's list is in 2021, when we had a functioning budget and finance committee, we had a very good draft grants policy and procedure we'd vetted. We're going to pick that back up to help give some more guidance, both the department heads as well as to this board and our finance staff for, bringing these things through. So it's a little more standardized.
I have something to say. Anna, this has nothing to do with you. You're just kind of caught here in the middle. But I feel that this is last minute and rushed, which, you know, you haven't had the support. And I feel like we are reacting and having to make a decision without all the information. And I know you've done your best. And I apologize as a trustee for all of this. But from now on, as soon as we get our finance director, I want you to work with them. And grants that come up, whatever you hear, I want it prepared ahead of time. And we have all the information. I want to make sure that you have enough money in your millage, in the millage, not your millage, but in the millage money, that that if you need staff during the summer, that's covered. I don't want to see like all the money going to
Yeah.
Z Road pathway
That's my
and you're
concern.
stuck out there weeding your stuff.
Or, yeah, or not managing the invasive species and doing all the cool things. I mean, you're such a gift to the township. I'm so glad you're here. I also recognize that you inherited other people's priorities, and they're super expensive priorities. And I just want to say, John, you know, the voters approved that millage. The voters never said,
I agree.
this pathway is our #1 priority. It has been this board consistently that has put the majority of the funds to that.
Any further comments? Please call the roll.
Flintoff, yes. Carrie?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Riser?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Resolution adopted 5-0. Thank you, Anna, for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Or you're welcome to stay.
Appreciate it.
All right, well, that brings us to H, reports. And we have a presentation on the fire station schematic design. It's H1.
I hope I'll be loud enough so I don't need the microphone. Please grab a seat. Okay, thank you. Good evening.
How was your flight?
Won't be. Today was okay, yesterday wasn't so good.
Okay.
And a zig and zag across the south part of the country.
You made it though, that's what
I
counts.
made it. But 10 minutes before I walked in, I was in flip flops and shorts, so had to do a little parking around noon.
Where did you fly from?
New Orleans. Atlanta last night, back to New Orleans, been here.
Well, thank you for being here.
No, I wouldn't have missed it. Obviously, I did what I needed to do to get here.
Well, thank you, board, Manager Parker, Attorney Fink, Andy Hood, Fire Chief, Brandon Sears, Assistant Chief, I think you know all of us, and David Gasson, Partners in Architecture. Before we dig into the presentation, I'm going to offer just a broad overview perspective of how we got to the point we're at today. I'd like to go all the way back to the mid-80s, when Scio Township started its own fire department. We broke away from the Dexter Area Fire Department, built the station on Z Road. Township's population was around 7,000. And to touch on Trustee Knoll's comment, prior to 2014, if you look at any census data, it includes the village of Dexter within Scio Township's population. So to get an accurate representation, you would need to then look at the village of Dexter's and back it out of Scio Township. So ballpark, 1990 was as far back as I could find in population for Scio Township. We had about 9,000 residents within the community, excluding Dexter. They were about 1,500 or 1,800. They've grown, we've grown. Today, Scio alone sits at close to 18,000 people. That amount of growth has not only stressed the volunteer fire department, but has changed the fire service as well. This is as a community gains more population, gains more business, we see a much more increased need for service. We have that today. This was anticipated. Our first fire chief, Will Dane, wrote a strategic plan that basically said, you need to figure out what you want and then figure out how to pay for it. And that really is the right way to go about a project like this. Oftentimes we say, hey, we've got a problem. I'm gonna put $300,000 at it, to use a number from our previous speaker. but then say, well, it actually costs us $600,000 to fix the problem, so we're really not doing a service. The proper way to do it is assess the need, price the need, and then find a way to fund the need if you want to correct the problem. And that's really what Chief Dane was talking about. Chief Carl Furch, in the early 2010s, he worked with Carl L. Wortman, and they developed a strategic plan that was presented to the Township Board of Trustees in 2015. That strategic plan was solely focused on building and staffing a second fire station in the southeast section of Scio Township. In 2018, Scio Township commissioned Emergency Services Consulting International to do a staffing and station location study. In 2018, the board was told you need a station in the southeast section of Scio Township. I started here, unfortunately, the same week COVID hit the US, so I got off to, it wasn't my fault. I got off to a bumpy start. However, I've been able to do a lot of assessment. And that led me to believe that both previous studies were correct. We probably needed a fire station in the southeast section of the township. A lot of data I gathered is on the township's website. I made a presentation to the board, and the board authorized me to create what's called the Fire Services Guidance Committee. That committee met probably, I'm gonna guess about 3 months last year. 1 day a week, probably 3 hours every day. A couple members here in the audience participated as members. There's several members both here in the audience and remotely that watched every board meeting or every commission meeting. At the end result, the Fire Services Guidance Committee recommended building a second station and increasing our staffing from the 3 full-time firefighters we have on duty today at Zebroad to a total of 9. The recommendations are to staff 1 fire apparatus, 1 fire vehicle with 3 firefighters at each station, an officer in charge or a battalion chief at our Zebroad station, and 1 rescue or medically transport capable vehicle for the township. Solves a lot of our problems. The board in its wisdom decided to put these issues to voters. Part of that, we were able to find a funding source and engage partners in architecture after a thorough RFP process and developing a schematic design for a potential fire station. We had 4 weeks to get this project accomplished, and this is not a final plan. I think one of the things we need to think about here is this is a broad overview. We need to refine the plan. So what you see in front of you is far from finished. However, if we get voter support this fall, we'll be able to start working on the final, dialing everything in, the right sizes, the right building layout, and the right look, and then go out to bid for construction. The numbers you see in here are based on what we came up with in 4 weeks and are the architect's opinion of probable cost for what that is. When we refine the scope a little bit, I'm confident that we can bring the size down a bit and also decrease the cost. That being said, turn over to Mr. Gasson.
Thank you, Chief. Good introduction in terms of what we've been doing, and I'm certainly glad to be before you tonight. This is the first time we've met, so I'm super excited about reviewing with you what work we've been able to do together with the department and the township committee. And I'm going to go through that now. I assume you've all had a chance to look at this. In general overview, what we're going to cover is a program mission statement and some goals. A real quick look at the survey and the site plan or a master planning approach to how we site the building, a building plan, and just operationally, how would it work, flow of the different aspects of the building, exterior character studies and what it could look like, some sustainability goals for a net zero emissions building, and then a budget review. So at any time during this, if you have any questions, please feel free to just ask. You don't have to wait till the end. I want it to be a little bit more of a kind of a working session overview review at the same time. So the mission statement, the group together put this together, provide an efficient fire station to serve the community with minimal impact to the environment. The goals and objectives to achieve the mission is to design a new fire station, to build a new fire station that supports and promotes the health, safety, and well-being of the firefighters and staff, and also the visitors and other users of the building. Apply sustainable techniques to achieve a zero net carbon emissions project. Construct a safe and secure building to protect the community and provide aid. Utilize advanced and enhanced technologies to optimize operations. You'll see that throughout the plan when we discuss it. And administer public funds with a focus on value-driven solutions. So, and that is not an afterthought, and it happens to be at the end of the page. Well, we think that way all the way through the course of the project, not just in this preliminary stage, but as the project progresses, that'll always be in the forefront, just like these other goals and objectives. The next couple of documents are spreadsheets. They're not too fun to look at, but it's a real basis for how we do a project. So this is what we call the program, or the needs assessment, or the analysis of the project. And the idea is we put a 30-year lens on our view of the project, and we work with the department and the township, and we go through an interview process, a questionnaire. We exchange some information, and then we use our best practices approach as well as a pretty in-depth experience in fire station, and put together this program. This program is not a one and done sort of thing. It's a document that's live, and it stays in the process to where all the way done. It gets reconciled along the way. And some things come to light in the program during the planning process that wasn't in the program, but gets added. Likewise, things get changed up or down in size. But that is very typical. And in general, it's got it has three major areas, I'll say: the apparatus and its support space, the crew quarters or their living areas, and administration and the community side of things, or the public aspect. So those three things. And there's support spaces, obviously, that go into it as well. But those are the three main pieces of the program. I'll point out one thing. I think it's important, and I'll reference it a couple times. About in the middle of the page here, it's a UFC recommendation, and that is a unified facilities criteria. So we're not making up sizes of a room, or is a room necessary out of the blue. That's coming from a source. This happens to be the Department of Defense document that puts together what are appropriate size spaces, number of spaces in a fire station. It helps us get to a bottom line in terms of how big the building should be. The other aspect to that, other than this dialogue we have with the department, is NFPA. They have a lot of requirements, but they also have a lot of guidelines. And their guidelines aren't necessarily like UFC, where it might say a space is 160 square feet. The NFPA is more like, you shall provide 7 feet clear here, 5 feet clear here, et cetera, et cetera. So that helps define the space and the size of that space, and that's how a program is built.
If I could just say one thing, I just want to acknowledge that this was driven by Scio Fire, informed with your expertise, but these numbers are not off the shelf at all. And I just want to say that this is very customized to Scio Township.
Yeah, and thank you for that point. Now, I'll just do one step further. Everything about this is specific to the interaction we have with the department. And I'll say, when we get to the building plan, a couple of things where we redid iterations of the plan. This isn't the first thing we came up with. It was many things on the floor before we got to this one that we're going to show you tonight. And I'll just kind of skip through the rest of these. It's the same kind of thing. It just outlines the spaces. The next is the survey, a very simple document outlining here's the property that we're working with. Site plan, again, you can see the boundary of the survey. And this is really us taking a look, physically going to the site, understanding the character of the site, the challenges that the site presents, as well as the opportunities. It's a very beautiful site. No matter what you put there, the backdrop is going to be amazing, right? It's got a really nice look to it, even though it's going to change. We understand that the crossroads is going to have a new impact on that corner, and certainly that is something that'll kind of harmonize with what we're doing. At least we think so, and we're trying to tie it together a couple ways. I won't go into a lot of detail here because I have another slide that enlarges the specific area, and I'll kind of talk about the site here. I mentioned we went to the site, looked at it. It's got a nice gentle rolling slope to it, undulates to the west, downward. There's also a natural waterway that comes across Wagner and it kind of meanders basically where that dark line kind of goes up to the left of the page. And that's natural. So there's not a wetland, but it certainly is a water-like space along the site there. We're trying to preserve that, thinking, we push the building away from that. So we want to keep it as natural as possible too. Don't incur additional construction costs to mitigate having to deal with that kind of wet area.
Will you need permits at all?
Not wetlands permit. I don't think it's a designated wetland, if that's what you meant.
Or just to protect it or to oversee or?
I can answer that. When we did preliminaries on this site, the entire site was surveyed and there are no wetlands on the site.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
There will be erosion permits, maybe more relative to that. Absolutely, yeah,
What's back here?
Open field.
Well, what's the plan for back there? Chief, I guess. I think it's you're talking about.
So when this property was purchased, this was part of the Wren's Farm preservation. We're able to carve off approximately 10 acres. The township's utilities engineer has indicated that at some point in the future that there may be a need for a second water storage tank. So as part of this, as part of securing this property, we're able to get space for a fire station and a future water storage.
Set aside for potential future use.
It's an optimal location for it. It basically ties right into the high point of the Liberty water main. And so that's for future potential utilities use.
Another thought, it didn't go much past just the comment in our talk about sustainability, is in a solar field. We have solar planned for the building and immediately adjacent to the building, but if community solar becomes a real thing, that might be an area to do community solar. It really was just a comment in that kind of segment of our meeting. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna go up there.
So yeah, if you need to advance, just let me know.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll just kind of point to a couple of things. So in site planning, to me, this is where you get off to the right start or you don't. And when we looked at the site, this is kind of that high spot. As you drive down the street, you kind of see that when it sets itself apart, it almost looks like a building should be there based on the way it looks. And it kind of slopes off here and then it slopes off to the back. Then we have a lining drive across Wagner there. So that kind of gave us a start point. Building should be somewhere up here. And we should have an access point here. Access for the building should be priority to the apparatus. The main exiting or the main purpose for the building is to get onto the road and service the need. So the apparatus apron would exit here. All incoming staff, fire apparatus returning from event or public would all enter here. So never to enter on that side. So we're trying to create a separation as far away as possible, but starting with this alignment right there. So public would come in here, have their dedicated parking, handicap parking, EV parking, and then beyond here, it's a very faint line. It would be demarked in a way, whether it's a kind of a speed bump, painted something, signage, saying public not beyond this point, something like that. Meaning they have to turn back out and go this way. Staff parks back here, they would exit this way too. Only exiting here would be command vehicles or deployed apparatus going to. Even visiting apparatus would be able to park here, but they would exit there too. They wouldn't have to return to this area. A couple other things I'll just reiterate again. Here's this kind of wetland or wetness kind of coming through the site here. This line is not really meant to show that, but the idea there is that crossroads will have some node of movement, whether it be vehicle, but I'm really thinking more pedestrian. And you have your master plan pathway linkage coming across Liberty and then down Wagner. The thought was to somehow create a pedestrian node here to have an access path back across the site, kind of enjoying a little bit of the site. That's just a thought. A couple other big things that we have to plan into here is potential overflow parking relative to the public part. So it's up towards the front versus the back. And then solar field alternative location, because we are showing it on the building now, but we may need more than what can fit on the building. So we're showing location alternative. Outside training for firefighters, indicating in the back, out of the way, but also ample in size and be able to maneuver apparatus out to it if they need to. And that covers the major chunks of it. I'll point out a couple other things about the building. I mentioned the three big pieces in the program: apparatus and support, crew quarters, living area, and administration and the public. So that's all towards the front. Ideally, separating them from site access for staff, apparatus having its own thing, exit out. The three main things I mentioned in the program: the apparatus and support, living, crew quarters, administration, training, public stuff, are three main elements. There were four pillars really to fire station design and site circulation, or what happens on the site outside the building is the fourth really critical thing. As I pointed out or started with, is that this is clearly an item we separate from everything else. Fire apparatus movement, morning checks when they come out of the building, getting on the front apron or back apron. Right now, we have apparatus flowing out, but we're also showing apparatus flowing in. The bay depth is large enough to have stacked bay or stacked apparatus, so deployment could exit from the rear out to the front. Again, all exiting for apparatus would be from this location. The other thing we're anticipating is a geothermal heat pump source for heating and cooling. So we've indicated a well right here. Again, that supports the objective for the sustainability and net zero emissions. We also have command vehicles. We cover those in the back. So that would be leaving the administration area, getting to their vehicles, deploying to a scene or event. And then that would also have some EV capability. EV in general, we're thinking that we're going to do infrastructure, even though it might not get implemented for an EV fleet in the future, but infrastructure, underground pathways to do it later, so you don't have to undo a lot of things in the future unnecessarily, and at a great cost as well. So those are the main site things. I'll point out just two more things: outdoor space for the day living for the firefighters, outdoor space for their fitness, and infrastructure stuff, a generator, transformer, that sort of thing. Any questions or thought on the site before I flip to
There's two EV areas, looks like bottom right and middle center.
Yeah, right now that would be public and command.
Okay. Public EV charging potentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple thoughts about that, whether it gets implemented now. What we want to do is make sure the building transformer is capable of handling that. The fleet would be its own thing in the future, but we want to be able to at least have that available. Go to the next slide. So the building plan, again, I'll just point out the three main things: apparatus and support, living, crew quarters, administration, and training and public aspects of the building. So the main entry to the building is in the front, near where the public parking was. It's going to be visible, obvious entry point. So there's going to be an interaction between fire administration for public in this lobby. And that area would be one, welcoming, but generous enough in size that this space, whether it be for firefighter activities, training, or having outside agencies come, or if it's public use, this pre-function space needs to be adequate for that space and accommodate the number of people that are there. Also in that space, we're looking at it as a little bit of a space where community can come and kind of regroup. There's a restroom shown there. It could be showering after a tragic event in the community, a power outage, et cetera, excessive heat, that kind of thing. So there would be some space for them to charge devices, et cetera, that sort of thing in that space. And then it would also have its public space, restrooms outside. Also here we're indicating, and you'll see this when we look at the character study, you'll see the solar array on the roof. So we're putting access, planned access, not a ladder inside the building or a straight up ladder inside the building. This is a real appropriate access point to get up to the roof and an attic platform. So there's a little ladder, stair room there. Within the administration space, we wanted that to kind of stand alone as a suite, so it's kind of separated but accessible. Certainly visible for the public from the lobby, but accessible from the station by the crew to get here. Likewise, they need to deploy, whether it's to the apparatus bay or to their command vehicles outside, they need to have easy access to get from here. Folks refer here. So circulation was key, and it always is in a station like this, or any fire station. We looked to create a very simple, understandable, no questions kind of circulation. This happens to be a circular motion. And then out, and then out. It's roughly around 25%, could probably be 22, 21% if we kind of squeeze here and there. But it's very efficiently laid out. And then the center space, and working back here are the crew quarters. This is their locker room, shower room area, dorms through here, day living, lounge space here. There's something a little bit unique about the way we've done the locker, shower, restroom area. It's very efficient in the square footage. We're able to accomplish much more in a small footprint. If we were to separate male, female, these are all together. So it's gender neutral. There's no changing going on. It's just locker room storage of personal effects. You get your things, you go to your shower room, go to your dorm, go back to your locker. You don't have to. It's not a traditional locker room per se, where people are walking in and out and wrapping towels. You go get your things, you go to the shower room, go to your locker and do your business. So it really creates an efficient use of square foot. The other aspect to that space, you can see the walls in that area is thickened. It's in the center of the building, not a lot of lights required. Being in the center, it's protected. The other part to that is a storm shelter. It's not a requirement right now, but we certainly think by the end of the year it will be. When I say requirement, I mean by Michigan code. So the thickening of this wall gives that character and that quality to be a storm shelter. It's a reinforced masonry wall with its own lid, so it'll be a roof inside of the building with another roof on top of it. So if the whole building blew down, all the occupants within this space would survive. And they'd have the facilities that they need, water, shower, etc. within that space. There's a little bit of a guesswork. We've done a handful of storm shelters throughout the state, probably the largest one in the state with the Michigan State Police. So we understand what needs to go in there. We understand this position within the building is the most economical place to put it. It's probably oversized. The requirement generally is just the number of occupants that use the building. This is bigger than it needs to be, but geometrically it makes sense to make the whole thing a community or a storm shelter versus making it just the right size. On the other part of living, this is a community space in terms of everybody shares a locker room. The dorms are individual. The spectrum there is a bunk room where everybody's in one room or semi-private or private. So this really puts a home style living where it matters. So the individuals are in their own sleeping quarters where they feel most at home as compared to maybe here. And then within the day room, as it's called, that's where your lounge happens, your dining happens, your kitchen space, and it's all one. So the camaraderie in the station is built within that space. The simple space, because it's big and open, is the apparatus, and all support spaces too. I won't go through much of it, but I mentioned NFPA in terms of not saying a apparatus base shall be this size, but they gave clearance requirements, etc. I'll point out that this is a very efficient layout for a 3-bay pull-through. It's probably got 8 inches extra space between here and here based on NFPA. And I say it's extra because they say it's 17 feet required for a bay. We do 17'4" because of construction modules. So it's more cost effective instead of using cut off material and wasting it, build it the right size based on the product you buy. Therefore, it's 4 inches wide. Doesn't hurt to be bigger, it hurts to be smaller.
So the bays, what kind of vehicles? Will they hold a pumper, ladder, water? What kind of vehicles?
It'll hold any current model that you would put into a fire station. There's size for any.
Including a ladder truck.
Including a ladder truck. Including in terms of length for sure, width for sure, and tilt up cab for maintenance. The height of this building will be adequate to tilt up a cab, so you don't have to pull it out onto the apron and do work in the winter outside. But right now, like I said, it's a double setup, so the depth is 85 feet, so you can have two apparatus. But
So it'll hold 6 maybe, what you're saying?
at minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, you could squeeze a couple rescues and be 3 in one bay, but I've seen that happen before, but it's not the recommended.
Chief, what would your plan be for the apparatus bay?
We would have 1 rescue, 1 ladder truck, 1 water tanker. And those,
And that's kind of what we show right now. You can faintly see it set up that way right now in the plan. But as I stated, in the program, we're looking 30 years out. There's a lot of unknowns, right? But we need to plan for some flexibility, not only within the operational side, but in the apparatus side for sure. The other aspect of the apparatus support, which is critical, and it's been, a driving force in modernizing fire stations all over the country. A lot here in Michigan is the decontamination, not just the room itself or that space, but the whole building is, how do you view contamination within the space? Living quarters, office area, apparatus, and where does it come from? So the decon happens mostly at the site. You gross decon yourself off before you return to the station, get back to the station. A lot of things happen. Michigan's cold, in winter you're going inside. So you pull some stuff into the bay, but you're really coming into here, cleaning up, with small hand tools, some gear, and then taking off your bunker gear, showering, putting your bunker gear through the extractor in the washroom area. So now it's clean, and then into its drying room or the PPE storage area. So now you've gone through this process of you being dirty, your gear being dirty, you get clean, your gear gets clean, you walk into the bay, you're all ready to go, and your gear sitting there ready for its next use. So that's an important process that's taking place everywhere. The other parts of it I'm going to point out, and I'll use the fitness center as a way to show that. So there's a little vestibule, which looks odd. Like, why would you do that? So this is a clean space. This is called a dirty space. This is really dirty space. So you don't want to necessarily enter from a clean into a dirty space. So you have this little inner space, which is a vestibule, which is positively pressurized. So decontaminants in here can't work their way into there, where you're exhausted, you're working out, where you're sucking in air, you don't want to suck in bad air. So this space is an important thing, and it's also here. It's also here for the same reasons. You want to be able to trap as much of the contaminants as you can before you leave the dirty space and enter this clean space, or likewise into this space. In addition to just pressurizing the space, I mentioned there's some enhancement or advanced technologies in the goals. There's air curtains now that we're putting in front of these spaces, so it's kind of like the belt and suspender. So in front of here would be an air curtain there, on top of the space being positively pressured. So we're really looking at that first goal, make it a safe environment for the firefighters and the users of the building through some advanced technologies. And holistically looking at the whole operation, how does it flow? How do you really get from anywhere in the building to where you need to be in less than 60 seconds? We generally try to say 50 feet to the app door before you get to the app bay. That's not a real rule, but we try to organize a building, and sometimes you just can't. So a 2-story building or long sprawling, you can't. You try to kind of put the geometry in a way that you can make it work out better. All in all, this is a really efficient space. Chief mentioned maybe there's some things that I've talked a little bit about kind of squeezing it a little bit, getting a little more efficient, maybe squeezing some square feet out. Right now, we're right around 16,550 on the ground. Then we have 700 feet in this kind of attic roof access platform to get out to the roof. So we're at 17,250, I think is the number as a whole. I think it fits into alignment with all the communities that I'm working on. I think I'm working on 12 fire stations right now, and over the years I've probably done 25. So this kind of falls into line with what you would expect. It's just not too small. I think it appropriately plans for some flexibility in the future, and it certainly meets the needs right now. So that's kind of the plan. Any questions with that?
Is there a basement
Or
part of the basement?
there is one plan. Any other questions? Okay, so character studies, I mentioned when we were talking about planning, when I was sitting down about, this isn't the one and done plan that we did. I think that was the fourth plan iteration we did, and this is, I think, the sixth iteration we did. So we did a number of studies. We were trying to capture what is Scio, is the drive-by feel. We went through, I think, a pretty good spectrum of options. You know, some were like, oh, no, not that. And we wound up with, let's try to figure out what it is we want. We wanted it to be strong. We wanted it to be grounded. We wanted it to be a community marker along Wagner. We wanted it to be, oh, that's a community building, so it's got to have some stature to it. The other thing is that it needed to look like a fire station. It needed to say, here's the fire station. So those are the things we wrestled with. Sustainability was another important part. The building has to be highly efficient, but we also want windows to capture daylight, so we're not using energy to light the building. This happens to face to the east, so you're going to get a lot of sun. So we're doing high performing materials on this side, deep overhangs where they really matters on the south, but the image needs to be carried out through all four sides. So we have I'll say deep overhangs throughout, and they are where they are when they're needed. Like here's more of the front view. You can see the entry portico. And hopefully you're agreeing that that's calling the attention to Mr. Public. That's where I go when I pull in. That feels like the entry. Again, a very traditional look to it. A couple of things I'll point out along the lines of sustainability. These are natural stones. So they're not manufactured, they're natural. So the embodied carbon is 0, except for transport. The other thing is in the area, we're lucky to have 2 really good manufacturers of masonry products, so they're local, which is great. So that also helps reduce embodied carbon from that standpoint. It won't help in operation, but in terms of the embedded part, yes, it helps. Rolling around to the backside, I mentioned the deep overhang. This is where the day room is. That's the dining space. So we're getting good daylight, but we're getting really good coverage from the sun by doing that. And that happens to be an aspect of firefighters want to feel like they're at home. So when they're at a station, there's a place to go and be outdoors and have a little fun time or home time. Mentioned the solar array. So here's the flat portion of the roof. That's that attic platform access. You'd be able to service the array as well as rooftop equipment. And because it's very accessible, generally it gets maintained better. And that's kind of the point we're doing. Same concept, but we went with a different palette, trying to go from not contemporary, but more firehouse tradition with reds. And so this is a similar silhouette of a building, same elements, different color, different materials. This is more of the Michigan fieldstone. So as compared to the other kind of flat stone in the previous version. This, I think, kind of warmed it up a little bit. On top of all those other things I said, we want it to be welcoming. It's not just, oh, that's the fire station. It's also part of the community. And a space within that can be used by the community and should be, and it's planned that way, is that the community would come and then have access into that main station or main training multi-purpose space. We're just trying to be frugal in our approach. The water table around is masonry, above it, insulated wall material, but the siding, we're drawing some balance between what it needs to be for the life cycle. So the hard area where it gets really used and abused is more the masonry. So that's masonry, this is siding in here. So we're trying to strike a balance. So when we get to the budget part of this, it feels like we've done our due diligence and our good effort to make the budget as frugal as we can make it and provide what the station really needs to be with that 30-year planned outlet, but as we all know, municipal facilities get used well into their 50 years. And most of the life cycle elements we're talking about are that 50-year endurance where it gets used and somewhat abused. That's the overall. Sustainability, there's a handful, and I won't go through them, but here are some of the target things we're looking at. I mentioned the geothermal, and use of some natural material, local materials, high efficiency in terms of insulator value, not just walls, but glass and roof, et cetera. So all of those are things that we need to go through in much more detail than we have. We've stated it as a goal. We've positioned the building on the site in a way that we think helps that. So the other choices are going to be in the next parts of development. Next one, a budget estimate. This outlines at a very high level, 6 major components of general construction to the top part, from site development down to contingency and escalation. So we built some escalation, assuming it goes in a speedy and a continuous fashion. You'd be maybe building this thing next spring. So we built in enough contingency for escalation to get us to that point. Design contingency, because things are going to change a little bit. As Chief said, we've done a pretty good job of preliminarily laying this out. We know we can squeeze it, but there's going to be something else that we need to maybe enhance or put into it that we didn't yet. So there's a contingency for that. So our probable construction cost is 8.430. That's about $485 a square foot, something about there, which is right on par or in alignment with all the other stations that I've done. I've really tracked this meticulously over a couple of years, stations all over the state. And the ones I've been doing since the beginning of the year, and this is really trending in that same kind of number. And then below that are things that, you know, when you think about construction costs, but you don't think about anything else, and you get a big surprise. So I like to enumerate all the other things that you need to consider in looking at the total project cost. So you're gonna have a contingency yourself, which is yours. It's not allocated money, it's set aside so you could choose to spend it. Or if you have to spend it, you can. If you find something big and ugly in the ground that nobody anticipated we have to take care of, that's where that would come from. Or if you want to do something special that we didn't do, that you could say add it, and you contingency to add it. So it's your line item of money. Then there's fees, architectural, legal, testing, engineer. There's all those things that you need to account for. And then soft costs. Those are things like furniture, audio visual, telecommunications. There's certain loose equipment and fire station that we take out of the construction side because we can buy or that you can buy and not get taxed for it. So we pull that money out of the construction budget, so you save that 6+% because there's overhead and handling that the constructor will add in. So you save about 10% of some of that money where we can buy it ourselves. And sometimes you can get it with a discount because you're buying it through the department, not just as a buyer. So we account for that. What's not including in there is like we showed that master plan, the linkage path. We didn't include that in there. And we also considered, well, maybe there's a deferment of 3 of the dorms. There's a potential savings out of that budget. There's a way to do it that wouldn't be too painful to add them in the future. And then if you're going to go past next year's construction cycle, we suggest you carry 4 to 8% contingency. And I kind of set it up where construction to me looks like starting in June. If you go, you can start construction in August and September and still be in what some might call the 24 construction schedule. But if you switch over the summer to the fall, you're going to incur winter conditions. So my opinion, it's not 24 construction period at that point. You're now flipping in winter conditions if you go past June. So I just wanted to stipulate that so you don't say, well, it's still 24. That kind of thing. And then for sustainability, net zero carbon neutrality, we have a number there, and it really ranges from that 1.340 to around 2 million. Depends on what we do. You could draw the line wherever you want, but there's a lot of things you could add into it. Our general approach for sustainability, even if you don't say I want a net zero, is we design sustainable buildings. They're tight envelopes, they're high efficiency, The equipment is high efficiency. This is kind of like cream on top, is really what that is. So if you don't do that, you're still gonna get a really high performing building. I'll wrap up with one final comment. The Chief mentioned we're in the preliminary stage. I looked at the project, like 5 major parts. I think we've broken this into 2 phases. So in the first phase, which I think we just finished, there are 2 parts. We've defined the project, we've done a program, we've envisioned it, and then we've preliminarily planned it. So that's 2, preliminary planning. So those 2 parts are done in phase 1. Phase 2, if you move forward, has 3 parts. The first would be to finalize the design, develop it, and then create the technical documents. That'd be part 1. Part 2 of that would be the delivery method decision. How do you procure your construction services and bid it? And then 3 of the final of the 5 would be to implement, to do construction.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you for your time, effort, and presentation.
Thank you.
It's a very handsome character study of our building.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't say I did. It's got a lot of thumbprints on it. A lot of people involved.
Both versions. I like both versions.
Just in closing with this presentation, we went into this with a lot of different things in mind, right? It's a 50-year building. The building next door we built 30 years ago. We renovated it. It's outlived expectancy. And we've almost outgrown it already. Our assistant chief's office is in the kitchen. So looking at it from that perspective, potentially, all right, we've got a couple extra dorms we really don't need today. 30 years from now, if we build them and we use them, someone's gonna say, man, that was a great thought. If we don't, someone's gonna say, man, now I've got to dump $2 million into some extra dorms in the building. And second, this kind of got glossed over, but I thought it was a very important point to bring up to the board. Our training room is bigger than we need it. That's specifically so that it can be used as a community space. That's something in Scio I don't think we have enough of. We have this. I'm sorry?
Power outages.
Resilience.
Yeah, power outages, homeowners association meetings, polling place. You know, if we think of the power outage we had due to the ice storm over winter, we've designed this so that folks can come in there and they can spend 6 hours, they can warm up, they can charge their devices, they can shower, kind of feel normal again. And the same in the winter. Future plans, but we're talking about other ways that citizens can help the community, and this could be a point where other help is brought out to the community in those times. So.
Want to compliment the process too, PIA, awesome work. Really, really awesome work. You and your colleague Lauren, I'm so impressed at how efficiently, intelligently you worked. Really amazing work in a few weeks. And also Eric Holzer, Terry Suave, Joyce Parker, Jan Culbertson, in addition to the people here. Really, really good work because we put them on a very tight timeline to have this presentation by tonight.
Thanks.
And I just want to comment as well. You know, I really think that the firm that was selected did a great job and kept us really focused. And then secondly, just to ask the board members and even the public, this is very preliminary. So if you have any suggestions or comments associated with the schematic design or the exterior design, feel free to let us know that, because I think it's gonna be something really positive in the community if we're able to move forward.
Question, Chief, but
Yes.
the firefighters look open.
Yes. Yep, they've seen it.
Eric was a member of the committee.
Yep, we've had some that have participated, and as we get more, once a week or more often, we're getting different renditions and things in. Now that this is together, I think I've gone through at least one shift with the full large floor plan and everything. I will get to the rest of the guys as well. I think we've been pretty good.
Proactive with it. Yeah,
we've
we've
been
covered a
keeping
lot
on
of
the
bases.
Thank you, board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
That brings us to the next item on the agenda, that's our regular reports. And we have a collection of written reports. I know trustee Noel, you wanted, I think, to add something to the materials that are here on the well testing. Why don't we turn to you first?
Right, so I will be writing something for our next packet on this. Will and I are meeting with Bill Stapleton and Keith Gadway on Thursday afternoon. Keith is our consultant, our engineering consultant on this, and he did the oversight of the prior Scio Township well testing. So we'll have more information later. We haven't compiled like a summary of the results yet, but that will be forthcoming after we talk to these people.
I just wanted to say, I really like this map. I know how difficult it was when Scio Township tried to create our own map. I want to promote, this mapping that the county is doing. It's so much clearer, fewer questions for residents. And I also want to note, I saw there was an MLive article, I don't remember when, at some point. I was surprised that you, for other style rep, weren't quoted in it.
He didn't contact me.
Okay, I was
He
just
normally
curious.
contacts me.
I was just curious, because sometimes I think
know.
that Scio Township was talked about so much, and oftentimes we have others, and certainly Gelman is not a Scio Township issue. It's a, huge issue, much broader than that. But Dan Bicknell often seems to speak on behalf of Scio Township. And I just want to state that, pattern. Yeah, I'm noticing.
I know, I hear what you're saying. The county took 4 weeks to prepare this map.
It is, as I said, it's pretty.
It's pretty. And on another note, I did reach out to the EPA, my contact person at the EPA, and shared all of this information. Nobody in the county had shared it with them. So it's relevant for their ongoing testing to have this kind of information.
Well, I'm glad you took that initiative. Thank you. Is there more about the well testing? before you
That's
move?
it.
Okay. Do you want to add anything in terms of your planning report? Trustee Reisinger?
So please look at it, call me. We talked about another iteration of the SCAP, or the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, which this board directed the Planning Commission to do back in July of 2022. One of the things that has come up with respect to PUDs is public benefits as they relate to climate action, and public benefits PUDs generally, that there's some consistency with respect to the approach of a project from the inception, from what's called the pre-application meeting, and there could be pre-application meetings, and how it kind of morphs and changes over time as people's vision or ideas of how to do it changes. I don't know what the answer is, but it's something we should be cognizant of. The Planning Commission kind of needs to know what the board is thinking with respect to what's public benefit, and the board needs to be sensitive to what the Planning Commission is doing and convey their thoughts in that regard. So just give that some thought.
And that's a great point, John. I did want to just remind us that, I don't know when it was, a couple months ago, this came up most recently at the board. We've talked about this time and time again. This board needs to adopt what a public benefit is. And I know Joyce, I trust you'll take some leadership on that in time. And I know we can't spec out every single public benefit, but even the questions of who comes up with them. Is it the Planning Commission? Is it the board, and where the process, and then
contractor,
and then our wonderful township attorney, is, has a piece of that too. So Joyce, what's your recommendation of how we can develop a policy? Because it's really got to come from the board.
Yeah, so actually, right now, I am working on a draft policy related to a development review committee internally within
Awesome.
Scio Township, and that draft will be reviewed internally with a number of individuals that now sit on kind of ad hoc
Yep.
committee, okay? But once we finalize the draft, I'll bring that to the board for consideration and approval. So we are working on that right now.
Thank you,
I think the
Joyce.
timing is good too, to do something like that.
Good.
And the other point I'll make before I move on or yield is Jackson Road. What is your vision? What is our vision for Jackson Road? Do we want to, should we put residential there? Should we put density there? Where should we put density in the township? Where does sewer and water, municipal water support density, support residential? So should Jackson Road look like it does now, 20 years from now, or should there be residential there? Should it be on the south side? Should it be on the north side? Should all those things, and it's a long stretch of road. So do you do it all in one fell swoop with respect to zoning law changes, or do you try to focus it on certain areas where we have a hub or a node or a cluster, like near the Goodrich or near Lithia or near Zeeb or near Stabler? So how do you move? Give some thought to how we do that. And that meeting that we had, the joint meeting with DDA, PC, and Board of Trustee was helpful. Thank you to those of you who attended both in person and remotely. And thank you to Kathleen Brandt and Rob and other people who were there present and given public input too. So it's helpful to help us vision how Jackson Road should be, and concomitant or going with that is sewer. Where we have 1,200 REUs left. That doesn't count the crossroads yet, I'm told. So.
Which is not yet approved. I just want to say a lot of.
No,
people-
I understand.
Yeah.
It doesn't count crossroads, comma, if approved, comma. So how long will 1,200 REUs last us into the future with our development needs? And the planning commission is of the opinion that should be something, the discussions with the municipality that supplies that should commence. And so I'm not saying it has to be done this week, this month, this year, but it's something that should be, we should give some thought as to where we want sewer capacity and how much we need and how we're gonna provide it, allocate it, dole it out.
Will there be another joint meeting? It seems like
But there was supposed to be a process out of it. My understanding, we allocated the money for the planning process. My understanding is after that meeting, there was gonna be kind of an outline of the JRAD planning process. I mean, we've had money allocated, so I assumed, I don't know if it's.
There is a work product from Carlisle Warman that's supposed to come from the work that we did in that
To give
meeting.
kind of a.
Yeah. So I'm not, this is not an action item. These are just like, this is what the PC, this is coming down the pike, or things to think about. Contact me, contact Jen, contact your fellow planning or planning commission members, or, show up or give input to it. Thank you.
And I want to say too, on the sewer thing, I just want to say it's a huge conversation to have. Reopening the conversation with the city of Ann Arbor. We're currently recruiting, and I know Joyce, you've got some candidates. Thank you for the utilities director. But I would also just caution us not to, I mean, we're throwing it out there and throwing it out there and throwing it out there, opening a contract and opening a contract. We also need to be aware of our negotiating position. And also, when we get it all, and I know you are.
Discussions, I didn't say, but I'm just.
No, but I'm just saying that, once we get a utility director, I trust Joyce and the utility director to kind of confer and determine how to interact with the city of Ann Arbor around this.
OHM too, right. Our engineer.
I think I think yes, and we need to competitively bid our engineer. I think OHM does a wonderful job for us. And I think there needs to be some consideration when we're talking about some of these big contracts. I would, personally, there's a couple questions where I would want kind of a second outside opinion on, and this might be one of them. I think OHM does a wonderful job for us, but I just think that we need to be strategic.
then I will say, and our engineer do. Without regard to.
Oh, certainly,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
of course.
All right, if there's no further comments, let's move on to, all right, I
I
guess there are some further comments. Trustee Noel.
So we haven't talked, I know this isn't a discussion item, the report from the annexation committee reps. But I watched the Dexter City Council meeting last night. I have detailed notes. It was a very interesting discussion they had. And I will share it in detail with the two of you. But Michelle, their planner, was under the impression that Scio didn't have any written reports. And so I emailed our 2 written reports to Sean Keo last night after the meeting. I didn't say anything. They knew I was there. I didn't think it was appropriate for me to say anything really unless they asked me. I agree, you know, so. Sean commented during the meeting, well, Kathy knows listening to this meeting. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, whatever that means, Sean.
Yeah, really.
Did they take, was there a vote taken in public yesterday?
No, but what they're going to do is discuss this issue again. And they're gonna want, they said, they want information, a written piece of information from the LPC so they can understand how Scio's LPC is viewing this property that's been put forth.
But it doesn't matter how Scio's LPC views it. It matters how the board views it. So if and when the LPC has not come forward with any recommendation to the board on this application. If and when our LPC comes to this board, then it would be appropriate for the board to communicate with the city council. I'm not about to say a Scio advisory committee should be communicating with a Dexter City Council. So maybe the commission, little c, needs to be a little emphasized there.
We can discuss this at our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, this.
No, our next annexation rep meeting. Because they're gonna want more of us in general. That's one thing, there's more. They want more definition as to where we are.
And we thought we were done meeting. I will say too, I noticed the Many Hands project was in the office today. Anybody have info on that?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I did sit in on a meeting related to conceptually what they're interested in doing. It was more like a preliminary meeting with our planning consultant, and I believe there was also a person there from OHM.
Prior to any submittals.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Carey.
Regarding the road advisory committee, we're having our meeting on September 6th. And I did contact, we had a meeting, Joyce and I, with WCRC, and they, we all agreed that there's, you know, we could do better with our communication and education. So they will be at our next meeting to do a presentation on roads and you know, it's just an educational, the 101, WCRC to 101.
Good.
So that will be September 6th at 6:30.
I just want to note a couple things. The audit prep, I talked to the auditors again today. We touch base about once a week. We're still on track for submission by 9:30. We've probably gone through 120 plus open items through them, thanks to Rebecca and Heather and Angie from Maynard Casterison for chugging through those. Few more items to get through this week, but nothing big, nothing troublesome. So they're on track for submission by September 30th. The presentation to the board will probably be in October after submission, which we've done typically. The draft meeting internally and that stuff is all gonna happen pretty quickly here this month before the 30th, but on track to get done. And I just want to, you know, comment to some of the public comments. I just want to, again, appreciate our incredible community who's so engaged. holding the board to account, reading letters from auditors, calling us out. It's the only way that democracy works, that you hold us accountable, that you call us out. So thank you for that. I will say, you know, that just highlight my newsletter article. I provided information on how to run for office in 2024, and I can't emphasize that enough. We need a lot of good people to run for township office in 2024. If anybody has any questions about how to do that, please reach out.
Okay, are we ready to move on? And let's move on to,
Oh, one more acknowledgement.
okay,
I meant to acknowledge Joyce Parker. Happy 3-month anniversary with Scio.
3 months already.
I just want to say, I'm so glad that you're here.
3 months.
Yeah, so glad that you're here. Appreciate working with you, implementing all the many reforms and big lifts we have to do here. And just want to acknowledge that, you know, per her contract, she'll be transitioning from being a contractor to being a permanent employee. And we're just really glad that you're here with us. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna just state, I do have a few comments before you move on with other items too.
Oh, all right,
on the agenda.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, oral reports are welcome.
Okay, all
Please,
right.
please, go ahead.
Well, first of all, as discussed earlier, our utilities director is retiring as of September 1st. And he's been with the township for 3 years, and I just want to wish him well in his retirement. And also, as one of the items on the agenda, Richard Hughes is being recommended on an interim basis until we get through the process of selecting a permanent person for the position. And Rich has served as interim beforehand, and I'm looking forward to working with him as well.
You'll do a great job.
Yeah. And also, just in terms of activities within the organization, we had 3 of our employees work diligently on putting together a picnic for the employees. And I just thought it went really well. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Andrea Garrett, Anna Cohn, and Becky Biacco. They worked very hard on getting that done, and I thought it worked out really well.
And a lot of people baked.
Absolutely. We had a lot of good food.
Yep.
And I'd like to thank board members too for participating and bringing good food. Okay, thank you. The only other item is just in reference to some of the comments associated with priorities for the township. And not at this meeting, but hopefully at our next meeting, we can talk about strategic planning and having a facilitator work with us and really addressing some of the issues that you've raised, where the board will be involved. We can have our staff involved, maybe chairpersons from our commissions, and resident involvement as well. So think about that as well. Yeah. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'd like to move us forward to agenda item G1. This is payment of the bills. And I understand from Trustee Knoll, we had a very brief conversation prior to the meeting. And that I'm guessing this is the reason that you pulled this, is that you would like to talk with me about an item, a reimbursement item on here. And I was just gonna suggest well, if I could finish, I was just gonna suggest, offer this as an option, that we just pull that particular item out, and then you and I can have the conversation that you had asked for and that I sort of reached out to you for, and that we just didn't find a time to do, and we can deal with it later, and that way we won't have to take everyone's time and hold up the payment of the bills.
Well, I thought we could maybe break it into 2 motions. I could offer a motion, if it'd be okay with you, Kathy, to approve the proposed claims for payment of August 30th, 2023, less the 2 proposed claims for $119.40 and $900 from 101-228, and to receive prior check run report for August 16th, 2023.
I'll support.
Okay, well, that, this is payments, so that will require a roll call vote.
Flintoff, yes. Carrie?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Riser?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Payments approved, 5-0.
And, okay, so I had expressed concern initially with Joyce in an email regarding the request for reimbursement for these expenses. And I had asked her some questions. Apparently she asked you some questions. You responded. I had additional questions as a result of your responses. I communicated this with Joyce and said, I'm not satisfied. And she said she would talk to you. And yes, you texted me and said, when can we talk? And I just didn't answer. I was busy that day. It was a chaotic day and I forgot to answer. And there was no follow-up from you reminding me that you wanted to talk about this issue. And then I saw this on the agenda tonight and I was surprised. Now, when I started to do some research on it, I talked to Jessica and I asked her if she could give me any background information on this issue. And she had a lot of background information. So I'm gonna turn to her because she's got more information on this than I do. But her information is concerning to me, and I think this merits board conversation.
So I think ultimately, it's up to the board to authorize expenses. I'll say, I don't believe that these expenses have a public purpose. I think as reference, if it's helpful, it's the vendor activity report for payments to Will Hathaway since November 20th, 2020. And I share this because this has been going on since 2021. And I think we have a transparency issue, and it is public funds, important to talk about in public. The buck stops here at the board about if we authorize payments. I've talked to David Rowley, Mark Thompson, and Joyce Parker about this over the last few years. I don't believe there's a public purpose. I want to give a little bit of background that in January 24th, I'll say there's two things to it. One is a Survey Monkey subscription for $900. The township has already paid for 2021 and 2022. What's proposed tonight is to pay for 2023, as well as chart creation software or smart draw software subscription. We've already paid for 1 year, $119.40. The Survey Monkey, it was January 24th, 2021. Will signed up. I know he wanted to do a survey of staff, and one survey of staff was in fact completed in 2021. To my knowledge, that is the only time this subscription was used for township business. On February 22nd, 2022, that is when we first approved it. That's when we first approved $900, so 2 years in a row, plus $119.40. February 22, 2022, I just got off the phone with a confidential conversation with our township attorney, Mike Homier, giving me advice confidentially about the proposed taking of my duties later that night. So I was a little distracted, but that is in fact the meeting where we approved this. I want to thank Kathleen Brandt from the minutes. Kathleen Brandt stated that the software recently purchased is the property of the township and should not reside on the supervisor's private computer. Complained that the board is not following the purchasing policy. We approved it anyways. February 28th, 2022, a FOIA request to the township regarding these expenditures for the chart creation and survey software. Well, as the board will remember, it was February 22, when they removed the FOIA coordinator function from the clerk to the township administrator. The FOIA response, June 28th, 2022. It is a lengthy FOIA response, clearly written, frankly, unnecessarily by Foster Swift at a few $100, denying, signed by James Murdy, Freedom of Information Act coordinator, stating the township denies the request because it's a cloud-based software and it's not installed on any device. So while the FOIA response was correct, it was evasive about the questions contained in it, which was the public asking, what is this used for? Why is it on Will's Mac? How is it? And it's not, it's a cloud-based software. But again, used once. I will say, we have other software that does these things. The surveying, we can use our website, Granicus software, we've used it for it. The Smart Draw software, it's something I personally had when I was a consultant before I became clerk. It's nice. You can also use PowerPoint and other things. To my knowledge, never once has NetSmart or our IT director ever said, we need this software. To my knowledge, I reviewed all the backup documentation for both the February 2022 payment as well as the currently proposed documentation. And there are a lot of emails back and forth, mostly forth, from Will to Joyce and David Rowley and Mark. You know, I don't see anything where there's an evidence of public purpose. I think that would be evidenced by use. I think it would be evidenced by an IT professional saying we need this software. And, you know, frankly, this is the third year we are being asked to reimburse for an unbudgeted personal expense. And it's disappointing that it's persisted so long. I know I told Mark Thompson and I told Joyce Parker, and I don't fault Joyce, I don't fault Rebecca. They certainly went through the procurement policy. But I will say my position, I said to Mark and I said to Joyce, I said, I see no public purpose. I said to Mark, I said, you can deny this or I will object to it at the board because I see no public purpose. So I haven't talked to Will about it because
why would you?
well, because there's no additional information I thought I needed. We've talked about it for 2 years. Again, the Scio Township taxpayers have paid for a subscription that's been billed to a personal credit card, which we sometimes have to use for our expenses, you know, but for a cloud-based software, SurveyMonkey used once, Smart Draw, again, not necessary. So I'm just, I say this, you know, I would never, you know, I just think it's inappropriate. We've had public scrutiny on this very topic before. I don't think there's any legitimate public purpose for this. My comments.
Trustee Noel, what are your concerns?
My concerns are, I didn't know anything about this, and I was unaware that you had made this unilateral decision to keep renewing this item. I want to know from you how it's been used in the last 12 months. How many times have you used it?
Which?
The SurveyMonkey?
The survey software?
Sure, and the other one too.
Okay. Well, I can respond to these issues. I guess we're gonna have this discussion in a public meeting with everybody. I thought you and I could talk about your concerns with you, but I guess that's not how it's
I
gonna
was
go.
going to ask Jessica and Joyce to be present when we
Oh,
spoke.
all right, well.
It wasn't gonna be just us.
Okay, so use of the software for the township,
The last 12 months.
hey,
That is what I said.
yes, in the last 12 months. So I would like to back up because we had quite a dissertation on the history of this, and I think we need to have some context for it. So in the first few months when I was, actually, I think maybe the second month of being supervisor, we were trying to sort out the township's administration. We had this question that had already started to become thorny in terms of whether to hire a township manager. And through discussions with other trustees, we settled on gathering information from the employees, the staff of the township. And we looked for some kind of tool in order to do that. And we talked about SurveyMonkey. That was commonly used survey software, and settled on that as the thing to use. And so I took the initiative. I signed up for SurveyMonkey. At the time, Jessica and I talked about it, and I said, I'll add you as the second person on this account so that either one of us could use this software. So that's how we set it up. That's how it was purchased, not just for a single user, but to make sure that either I or the clerk could have access to this software.
That was that first $900 that was paid a year ago.
Well, in 2021. And that was the plan, and in fact, we did use it. We used it to gather information from staff. We actually expanded a little bit and got some information from some of the people who are serving on advisory boards and consultants to try and get sort of, a better sense of where people were at in terms of various factors about or aspects of Scio Township administration. And that, I think, informed the deliberation as we proceeded through the spring. Now, because you were in the thick of it, Kathy, that we went through all sorts of discussion and gathered all kinds of information in the course of working our way through that question. But the software subscription, when you sign up for it, it has this automatic thing. Unless you say, no, we don't want to renew it, it rolls over.
So that was, the second year was an automatic renewal?
Well, second year, we had,
The vendor activity report.
excuse me, the second year, we had a township administrator by that point. And so I said to David Rowley, this is coming up for renewal. This is this survey software. And he said, oh yeah, I know about that. That's good. Let's keep that. Let's renew that. So I actually did confer with the township administrator at the time. He said, I'll use that. If Jessica's not using it, why don't you make me the second person on that software?
Did Jessica use it at all?
No.
She was.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And that's
Didn't
why,
need to with other
that's why I felt, comfortable moving the second seat or whatever, the second user status to the township administrator,
To David.
to David.
And did he use it?
I don't think so, because he was only here for 5 months, and I don't know that he had an opportunity to use it, but when the decision came to renew, he said, yes, renew it. I find it useful. I found it useful in the past. Put me on. I'd like to be able to use that.
So that's the first year and the second year, and now we're on the third year.
Correct.
Correct. The third year, we'd gone through 2 more interim administrators. By that point, Mark, I think, was township manager, interim township manager. And when I had the conversation with him, unfortunately, it was past the point where it had already rolled over. We just weren't paying close attention. I did talk with Jim Murdy when he was township administrator. I told him that we had this. He said, oh, that seems like a good thing to have. But it wasn't the point where we were about to, have the rollover for the renewal. So when I talked with Mark Thompson about it, Mark said, well, are we using it? And I said, well, we haven't used it, since the first spring. And he said, well, then I don't think we should renew it. And I said, okay, well, fine, except that it's already rolled over. And so we've got it for another, year period. But then I, based on his his advice, I stopped the automatic renewal.
So it sounds like you should have stopped the automatic renewal earlier.
Well, in hindsight, yes, I suppose if I'd had the conversation with Mark Thompson earlier, then I would have had his input versus the input from the prior township administrator, which said, oh, that's good, renew that, keep that subscription.
But at no time did an IT professional say we need this. At no time was it budgeted.
And is it really something you need an IT professional to weigh in on? I guess
To
that's the
say,
question.
here's some other software we already have that can do the same things, which is what we used.
So did you forget about the automatic renewal?
It rolls over in January. I think that's when it was originally purchased, and so every year it comes up. I was aware of it coming up when it came up the first time around. I didn't really pay that close attention the second time around, or the third time around, I guess.
So this was in your name and not the township's? So I'm thinking that if the township has a subscription, it would go through a department and they would have, it would be billed through that department, but this was through your credit card?
I paid for it with my personal credit card. So yes, that's why I'm seeking reimbursement for a software that I bought to use for the township.
And you used during the first year.
2021.
So the
Right.
township was already paid for an extra year when it went unused, year 2.
Correct.
And now we're into year 3, when you're asking for reimbursement for year 3, when it still hasn't been used.
The total amount would be $2,700 that we have paid for the software. So it's 3 years times 900, is that what I'm understanding? Or
Yeah,
do you
we've
know?
paid 900 twice. We're being asked to pay 900 again. We've paid 119.40 once. We're being asked to pay 119.40 again.
And the 119 is for what again? I'm sorry.
For this Smart Draw software, which can, again, it's PowerPoint. We have an IT director. We had NetSmart. We have other software that does both of these things, John.
So it's software.
It's cloud-based software.
Okay.
It's just like doing org charts and things, it's like PowerPoint, Visio, something like that.
So can I ask a couple questions? Have you stopped the subscriptions for both of these or finalized it such that you won't get billed again either by Smart Draw or Survey Monkey?
Yeah, I stopped both of them now.
And they're stopped. And have you used either of them, the Smart Draw and the Survey Monkey, for any of your personal interest, business interest, 501c3 interest, or any other capacity other than for Scio? Have they been used in any other capacity?
No.
So they've been available for Scio, but not used for Scio?
Well, actually, I used Smart Draw as recently as last December in response to a request from Trustee Brazeau. He wanted to have an org chart. So since I created the org chart before using that software, it was relatively easy to update it and provide it to him.
But he could
And
have
just
used township
show,
software.
just to point out one thing about the Smart Draw, since I haven't provided any background on that yet. That also was a recommendation, or not that Survey Monkey was your recommendation, but that was a recommendation from Clerk Flintoff back in the spring of 2021, when she and I were both tasked with making a presentation to the administrative committee, I think that's what we called it.
Yep.
And I was trying to honor what Clerk Flintoff had said, and that is that the presentation should be as parallel and alike as possible in format. And so I was trying to honor that, and I asked, hey, what software are you using for creating organizational charts? And she said, you just go out and find something, there's lots of options out there. Smart Draw is one of them. So I went, I found Smart Draw, I signed up for it. It came with a cost. And I used that throughout the discussions about our administrative structure. No one at any point has said to me, you can do that with some other software that we own. So I just kept using it, and that's what I used when I was responding to to trustee Brazo's request.
And, I think that,
I didn't know it either.
well, we don't have it. That's the thing about cloud-based, right? It's subscribed to whathaway@sciotownship.org. You know, it was not necessary. There was not the recommendation consultation with IT. And I just have to say, you know, I would just stand by, you know, it's not a public purpose. I regret that it's come to the point where we have to have this conversation in public, but the buck stops here.
But do you
at the
regret
board.
it, Jessica? You spoke to her about it, but you didn't speak to Will about it.
I brought it up.
John,
She's the one that
this has
brought
been
it up.
ongoing for 2 years. Truly.
But
John, I reached out. I wanted to talk to Will. Joyce knew I had issues with this. I wanted to have a discussion. And that broke down.
But it didn't happen. I mean.
It didn't happen.
I
He
can
sent me a
count
text
votes.
message,
He's not
but
gonna
he
get
didn't
reimbursed
follow up
tonight.
on
I get it.
And I forgot to do it. So, but I was going to have Jessica and Joyce present when I talked to Will.
I just don't think this is a way to confront a fellow elected member. I'm not saying the guy's not an adult for doing it, by the way,
Well,
or
by
it
the
should be
way-
reimbursed, but for crying out loud, have that conversation in private, and then maybe he doesn't see
I
recompense.
had indicated I had an issue.
I'm talking
and-
about Will. I'm just,
Wait, I had indicated I had an issue, I had concerns. Joyce knew this, Will knew this. Resolution never occurred.
I reached out to you, you didn't respond.
Correct.
How's
You
that
should have
my
reached
fault?
out another time.
So
Just like I do when you don't respond to me.
I mean, we're springing this on him publicly, and maybe that's the way to do it, but maybe if we
Springing
talk.
No.
this has
They
been going on for
both
2 years.
knew. I talked, they
There's
both
20
knew I had
pages,
issues.
20 pages attached to the AP invoices of request after request of manager after manager after manager. I mean, the first one, you know, was even approved by Will himself, which is okay, except this has gotta stop. So what I have to say about the conversations, I don't know what conversations intended to have or not. My point is, as I told Mark Thompson and I told Joyce, I see no public purpose in this. And so I would make a motion to deny the proposed claims for $119.40 and $900 from 101,228 because there is no public purpose.
Well, that's not true.
I'll support the motion.
Is there anything else, any other expenses that we don't know about? Any other software, anything else that's out there that?
No,
is being-
when the proposed payments for claims for payment, they go through our procurement process, they go through the regular process, and I present them, so they go through Rebecca, so I mean, I don't want, this is the kind of extraordinary thing that's outside of the procurement process, where what does the board expect to do? Expect to have the finance manager, expect to have the manager unilaterally, a staff person unilaterally bring this up?
See, I'm looking at the public, I'm looking at our purchasing policy, and it says purchases in a dollar amount from 25 to 250 are made by department head. Purchase orders not required. And then it says purchases from 250 to 1,000, department heads are authorized to purchase goods and services between this dollar amount, and he would be regarded as department head. And then it says the department head requesting the purchase must complete the purchase order form, signing and coding the purchase order. So had he done a purchase order form, he could have spent this money.
So John, so procedurally, that didn't happen.
No, but I'm
what
saying
I'm
he's
saying is-
authorized to spend up to $1,000 for.
There was no budget.
I appreciate,
There was
I
no
appreciate that.
procedure, but those are details, that it
And I-
wasn't budgeted and not PO. What I'm saying is there's no public purpose. There is a motion on the table.
I think there's a public purpose.
Can I speak?
He's not using it for himself, he just didn't use it for it yet.
Yeah, can I speak? Look, we've got somebody waiting here patiently for us to get to the next agenda item. I am very conscious of that, and I would just like to withdraw my request for reimbursement for these two items so that we can move on and deal with that item on the agenda.
Will you please not bring it back?
I will please not bring it back.
Because that's what's
believe me, the last thing I want to do is bring it back and hear again what I heard this evening. So let's just move on.
And that's what I would have hoped, that a conversation ahead would have allowed him to withdraw that and say, I don't know.
And I would have hoped that too, but we never got to that point.
Okay,
Will, is the
John,
so,
2 years.
Will,
so
the smart draw is that subscription, has that ended?
we already had this conversation. Yes, both of them have
Both of
been,
them
have been.
Well, I
added.
heard about the Survey Monkey, but.
Well,
I didn't
it was
hear the
quick, but yes,
Okay.
both of them have been non-renewed at this point.
So I will withdraw the motion if you concur, Kathy, based on the understanding that will not be bringing these back.
So that moves us on to agenda item G2, which is PAAW Palmer AA Warehouse Detail Engineering Review, SP number 23004. And I sent out a modified model motion late today, so it's close to what we had, but this reflects the input that we had from township attorneys when we met with them yesterday morning, and also from a conversation this afternoon with the township engineer. And so I'll just read that off just so we have it all here, but you've all got this by email. To approve SP number 23004 Palmer Warehouse to construct a 24,000 square foot building addition based on the recommendation of the Planning Commission provided in the minutes of their regular meeting held on June 20th, 2023, and to approve the allocation of 4.8 additional REUs as recommended in the attached OHM memorandum of 8/16/23. These approvals are subject to the township attorney's review and approval of all related easements. So that's motion. I'll make the motion. Is there someone who will second the motion, and then we'll have discussion?
Second.
Okay, so moved by Hathaway, support by Carrie. And now we have with us the representative of the applicant. Are there any questions for the applicant? Well, we have him here.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I do have questions, but they're not necessarily for you.
Well, we also have with us Matt and
Doug's here as well.
and Doug, so
Okay,
both of them can respond to questions as well.
Okay, well, it would be directed to Matt and Mariah. In the OHM August 1st letter, they state that the placement on the township board agenda is contingent on the following comment being addressed prior to a pre-construction meeting. Revised plans and the stormwater drainage easement shall be sent to Stacy at OHM. So have we, Mariah, have we seen the stormwater drainage easement?
I haven't seen it.
And
But Matt might have seen it if it was going to Stacy. That doesn't say that it's going to me, right?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. Yeah, no, I think those need to be prepared so we can review them. And just to be clear, it's simply just a stormwater outlet. It traverses their outlet traverses the water tower property access drive. We have reviewed that with the plans with Steve in the utility department. We see no cause for concerns, but I believe those easements still need to be drafted. And then I once we would review them, check them for closure, then we would send them on to Mariah and Jim.
so
I think our applicant.
I can find that out. I can make a call to the guy from our office that sent them. I mean, they supposedly have been sent and checked. I don't know if that's through Stacy or Matt or who that directly went to, but these have all been through several revisions with someone representing the township.
And honestly, we would prefer that those easements get recorded as part of the construction and make sure that the pipe that gets installed in the easement are consistent. So these are just things that we noted that because it impacts township property, we wanted the board to understand that there is easement agreements that need to be done. So my recommendation would be, let's not record them yet, but let's make sure the easement language is sufficient. Make sure Mariah and Jim are good with them, how they're worded, because it does impact township property. But we see no technical issue, and then we would not want to record those until the actual pipe is installed, and we can make sure that the easement's centered on the proposed utility.
Yeah. We got in the packet.
Mariah, shouldn't
Not,
you?
not necessarily. I mean, isn't the motion that it would be approved contingent on those easements being approved by attorneys?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think that I'm hearing Matt say that the easements aren't gonna hold up the project. It's really just legal review. I don't think it's going to be an issue either. And I think there's this, that easement, and then there's another easement about access, is that right?
Yeah, so the easements were sent to the planner who Andy in our office thought was sending it to the attorney. And multiple changes have already been made according to that. So this has been communicated with, I guess Laura or Doug.
I think the access easement has had more review than the drainage easement. Am I correct on that? Because that one sort of popped up late in the process.
Is the access easement, the one that Jim's been working on? Yeah. See, we're not calling it Palmer. I'm confused by that. We're calling it Frisbee. So, yeah, so we've seen the Frisbee easement, yeah.
So are there further questions?
Just a question about the 4.8 additional REUs. What is the main purpose for those?
It's a requirement from the township. There's no new water being piped over to the additional square footage. It's just a simple calculation based on this table A of Ann Arbor's water, stormwater.
Space?
Yeah, it's.
Size of the building?
Based on specifically the size of the building, it's 0.06 gallons per day per square foot. 1,440 gallons per day, where one REU is 300 gallons per day, equivalent to a residential house. So
Yeah, it was a simple recalculation based on the square footage changing. But as the applicant mentioned, no additional plumbing is being put in, but we usually account for that conservatively because the square footage increases means that it could be more employees, more use of the building, more usage of the plumbing because of that. So again, this is why table A is not perfect. And this is why we track REUs, but it's always also very, very important to true up and meter every 4 or 5 years. But this is consistent with every other site plan that we ever do for Scio.
So we'll take it off the 1,200, but when we true it up, we add it back because hasn't been used, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
You have other questions?
No.
You were.
Well, if there are no further comments, may we take the roll?
Sure. And I'll just read it for the benefit of the public.
Sure.
Okay, I don't think, or did you read it already?
I read it
You did?
already,
Okay,
but I can read it
perfect.
again. or
No,
you
no,
can read it.
that's fine, as long as it's once. Hathaway, motion by Hathaway, support by Carrie. Flintoff, yes. Carrie?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Riser?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Motion adopted 5-0.
This brings us, thank you very much. Sorry for the delay.
I just want to make one comment while Doug and Matt are still on. This doesn't apply to you. I just want to say for our planning items, I've said this privately, ad nauseum, publicly, several times. And I know Joyce, you're working on it. It sounds like with kind of a workflow for the planning items. But I gotta say that, planning items are so complex. There is so much paper involved. There's so many steps of the process. And I continually feel like we have so many people working on planning items, yet not one consistent person who's carrying it from the planning commission to the board, okay? And so what I want to ask again is that we all trust our manager, Joyce, who is the direct supervisor of our engineer, of our planner, to bring forth, prepare items, obviously with all the help of all the staff that's needed, but to make sure that they're ready, because I think that when these big items aren't, this isn't even a big one, right? But if we don't have the benefit of being on the planning commission, John, right,
No,
so
I appreciate
less familiarity. And so I just wanna ask, talk to Doug and Laura and Matt and Joyce and Will and Mariah, but it's almost become kind of like Groundhog Day now in our Monday morning attorney meetings, and I'll look at something on the agenda and I'll say, hey, want to make sure you've seen this or you've seen that. And the answer isn't always yes. So
Is there anything you need me to do
To
as the
Mariah?
PC
Are
rep?
these questions being directed to Mariah?
yeah, like when we have questions of like, okay, has township attorney reviewed this? Has township manager reviewed this? And so what I want going forward as a board member, I don't think this has to do with planning commission.
Okay.
So much as planning, our planner, our engineer, our manager, and our attorney. Those are the 4 people I want to see submitting and signing off on every single item that comes forward. So we have got to change our workflow. I think we recognize that, but I'm just saying from a board perspective, I would just ask that we empower Joyce to run point on this, on planning items, and be the one to bring planning items forth with the support of the whole team.
So
I would like to go a
item,
little further with that and just comment that we've discussed this issue before. John and I have discussed this issue with you privately. Do you remember?
I remember.
Okay. It seems like we continue to have the same issues over and over again. And I would propose that Joyce and our planning staff oversee and prepare all board agenda planning items. In other words, final decisions on placement planning items on the board agendas would be made by our manager, Joyce Parker. Let her take it over.
Joyce earlier in the meeting talked about bringing forth a proposal. I think it goes to this, and why don't we wait and get that and then have a discussion about that rather than just sort of making stuff up at, 10:20. And I would like to move on to the next item, which is J2.
Can I just ask Joyce, is what you described working on, will that include a proposal regarding the preparation of items for us from planning?
It will. I can
Okay,
do that.
and are you comfortable with the state of things, waiting until then for that?
Well, I really hope to get something on your agenda by your second meeting in September
Okay,
for review.
Regarding,
Regarding the, well, part of what we're doing is putting together a development review team
Okay.
internally, which
Okay.
would really help with the coordination.
Okay.
And identify who's doing what, put together a checklist to make sure that we have things done in an appropriate manner. And with some authorization from me before the item goes on the agenda. So we'll work collectively to make sure that we actually have the checks and balances in place.
the development review team,
Yes.
whoever that ends up being.
Well, yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
but it's the authorization by the manager to say, this is good to go to the board.
Right,
That's
but
what I'm looking
I would
for.
authorize it before it goes on the agenda. But the team would work with me in that
Okay.
regard.
So that's coming down the pike.
Yes.
Pretty quickly.
Pretty
sounds like.
quick, yeah.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. It's just, we've had so many big things and we can't, it puts our township attorney in a terrible position, it puts our planner in a terrible position, it puts our applicants. It would just help us all be more efficient and make better decisions.
Item J2 is the authorization to appoint Richard Hughes as interim utilities director. And I believe, Clerk Flintoff, that you have a model motion. Would you please offer the model motion?
I'd be happy to. Joyce prepared a memo. Do you have any other background comments to make?
The memo basically states, the time frame for getting the position, in place. And at this point, we have, I believe, 8 candidates for the position, and several of them look really good in terms of
Yay.
their background and their experience. I hope to have OHM and others involved in the selection process, but the plan is to get through this in a timely manner, but a thorough manner, so that we get the right person.
Good. Wonderful. And with that, I'd be happy to make a motion to appoint Richard Hughes as interim utilities director until a permanent utilities director is on board, and to authorize a salary of $92,811 for this exempt position.
I support.
Moved by Flintoff, support by Carrie. If there's no further comments, let's call the roll.
Okay, Flintoff, yes. Carrie?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Riser?
Yes.
Hathaway?
Yes.
All right, motion adopted 5-0.
Which brings us to public comment. This is a time for members of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any matter under the purview of the Board of Trustees. We have with us still in person 1 member of the public.
You
offer a mic?
No, 11 minutes.
Oh, you said, would you like to use the mic?
We only offer 11 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. No, I'm kidding.
I don't take that long. I'm gonna do a little presentation, but first I would like to compliment Clerk Flintoff, Trustee Noel, Trustee Carey for doing the people's business. This issue with software, I personally brought it up because I review all of this stuff, the payment of the bills. I personally brought this up as an issue for this board. And I'm sorely disappointed to hear a relatively new trustee question that whole process. I also am the person that did the FOIA request for that, because it appeared to me as a taxpayer as not a proper expense, and not to have it on someone's personal laptop. And for you to defend that action when it's clear that the facts say the software is not being used. And somebody made a mistake and forgot to cancel it. So I don't think that's a good idea to say, let's pay them anyway. It's taxpayer money. It's taxpayer money. And the whole issue of, was this discussed? It was discussed, and apparently it was snuck into the bill payment while the clerk was on vacation. So let's get our facts right when you support somebody that does that kind of action. So I would like to present, what do I need to do, Christy?
Zoom screen share. Is she a presenter?
Not yet.
Okay.
Hold on. Thank you.
There's 2 of them. Did I get the right one?
I think so.
Kathleen Brandt.
Yeah, I know.
She's saying there's 2 Kathleen Brandts.
Oh, that's probably my bad.
Jumbo.
Okay, share screen. So I want to talk about the Fruitix. I see there's a supervisor's report that talks about a group of people that are investigating that. I am very skeptical of that process. Please pay attention to me. I'll explain the spreadsheet. I'm very skeptical of Doug Luan being involved in that process because to date, he has not attempted to do any enforcement on the regulations of the conditional use. Meaning that in the conditional use, it clearly says that agriculture is the primary method of revenue, and this is secondary. It's not rocket science to do the research and find out that that is so grossly disproportional. And so I do not like the fact that Doug Luan is now involved with the enforcement when for years he hasn't done anything for this part of the conditional use. I would say the same for Mr. Hathaway. I don't trust his procedures. So what I have done is I've compiled data. This is actual data from Misty Farms webpage. This is data from their calendar for the year 2022. I have compiled how many weekend events did they have in each month, and how many weekend events plus a day. I've done it for Misty Farms and I've done it for the Valley. Now, the source of this information is, and I'll update this is fruiticfarms.com. It's their webpage, and I have all of this documented. I've got screen captures of all of this, which I will provide to you. Okay, so how much do they charge per weekend? They charge $20,000 each venue. The source of that information is a public source that they advertise on called herecomestoguide.com. I have that documented. I have screen captures of that. So I've compiled how many weekends of these two venues did they conduct during 2022. Misty Farms had 32 weekends. You can start to understand why the neighbors, that you're making them pull their hair out. This is what they have to deal with. At $20,000 for each event, their revenue was $640,000. And the same at the Valley, 33 weekend events for $660,000. They also charge a service fee of 5% of the venue price. Again, the source of that information is their own webpage. I have it documented. So for these two venues, you see that they are making in excess of over $1.3 million. Their agriculture revenue, they have 16 acres for Misty Farms. They have 23 acres for the Valley. You have heard comment that there is no farming being done on Misty Farms. Nobody thinks there's any farming being done at the Valley. You can guess that they have zero revenue. This is empirical evidence. I read in the board package that Kelly Frutig sent you a letter, invited you to come out. I think you should do that. And when you come out and look for the farming. Look to see where they're farming. She doesn't mention that at all in her letter of come and see what we're doing to the community. She doesn't say, come and see how we are harassing our neighbors with more than half of the weekends out of the year for two venues for which at least 3 families live within 300 feet. Half of the weekends, they have this going on. You should take the invitation and go on a Saturday. Hear for yourself. Take Kelly Frutig's invitation. Go look for the farming. If this is not obvious, they are breaking the conditional use. If you're not convinced by these facts that are all publicly sourced, then you are not making good judgments for the residents of Scio Township. I wanted to get this out here before some nonsense comes on September the 28th to all the mea culpas. We won't do it again. We don't make that much. Whatever is going to be said, these are the facts. They're irrefutable. You have no choice but to deny this. You should also listen to the evidence that's presented from Ann Streeter about what Webster Township did. And there is case law that farm in Webster Township cannot do wedding events because it's not in the Right to Farm Act. Case law, Circuit Court, Appeals Court, case law. They stopped it. I don't want to hear Doug Luan saying, well, you know, he shouldn't be involved in this at all because he has been derelict and now the township has to take action. He should not be involved in all because he was the guy that put this in here and gave him wide open lane to drive through. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one comment. My understanding is the presentation is being worked on by a team. Will, Joyce, our attorney, our fire chief, our planner. That's my understanding of expectation of who's gonna inform it. And that part of it that I'm really asking for is, you know, what is the controlling ordinance? You know, the history, the conditional use on each one, and where does this 51% fit in? This, you know, all of it, so.
Yep. Is there anyone participating remotely? who would
Yes,
like
there's
to-
two more. Pam Boyd had her hand up first and then Rob Pattinson. Pam, go ahead.
Thank you, Christy. Pam Boyd, an informed Scio resident. Thank you, Kathleen. A similarly informed resident, good info. Thank you, Manager Parker. Congratulations on your first 3 months with us. You are awesome. And I look forward to your next 3 months and beyond. To the board. It seems that some of the issues tonight could have benefited from, gosh, let me think, maybe a planning session or two. You know, we residents will still be involved in that though. And Trustee Reiser, these issues need to be public. Please don't protect us. Lessons need to be learned by new trustees and learned by residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Rob Pattinson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Rob Pattinson, Scio Township.
Rob, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Rob Pattinson, Scio Township. First of all, thank you, Kathleen, for that excellent presentation. I will say that the Webster Township case went to the Supreme Court, who denied to hear it, therefore affirming the Court of Appeals decision. Supervisor Hathaway, I had hoped that you would have given your supervisor's report rather than just leaving it in the written form, because had you given your report, this could have been a discussion item. Clearly, it's an important one, and it's unfortunate that you didn't give the board that opportunity. With regard to, well, next is Trustee Reiser. Thank you very much for moving Anna Cohn up to the beginning. That was a good catch and very well done. Thank you for that. With regard to the fire station, the driveway on the north side of that property is going to be right next to the property line. And whatever goes in at Crossroads, if it's residential, that driveway and the utilities just south of it between the driveway and the building, it's got the generator and the utilities. I know that when we lose power, and as often as we lose power in Scio Township, we can hear the road commission's generator across the street. That generator would be very close to any residential areas north of the fire station. And then another thing about the fire station is the architect going to make the flat section of the fire station ready for a second story, where 25 years down the road, when we need to add more firefighters, will we be able to add a second story to that fire station without it costing a fortune? Thank you, Supervisor Hathaway, for telling me about the planner's report being in the agenda packet. Thank you, Manager Parker, for the manager's report. That was excellent. Thank you very much for that. I would highly recommend, you talked about this earlier, highly recommend the Planning Commission, the Board of Trustees, the DDA get together for another working session dedicated to the PUD public benefit discussion. It's going to take all three groups to get that together. And that working session, that last working session was very successful. And I hope you follow up on that momentum and do it again. By the way, for the $119 software, Google Forms is free, and so is a piece of paper virtually. You did not need to spend $900 to survey the staff about the administrator versus manager issue. John, tonight you were applying normal interpersonal etiquette to Scio when you were outraged at the supervisor being outed in public. What you don't know or understand is that Scio Township isn't normal. You haven't lived through nearly 3 years of dirty tricks and manipulation. And Will is behaving as expected. Jessica and Kathy called him out. That too is expected. That is normal in Scio. Weirdly and unfortunately, tonight, the most out of order person during that part of the meeting was you, because of not understanding how messed up Scio Township is. And that is such a damning example of Scio, and we all need to do better. Thank you.
May I reply to you, Rob, and to Ms. Brandt and Ms. Boyd? I'm new and I have things to learn, and I wasn't saying let's pay it anyway. I was making inquiry of how the bill came to be incurred. I'm not saying Will was right to incur it. I'm not saying he was smart to incur it. He certainly wasn't. I'm just saying I want to be on a board, on a body where we have collegiality, where we get along. And I would have much preferred that if there was a conversation to Will ahead of time that says, Will, this isn't appropriate. It's a bad look for you. It's a bad look for the township. I think you should withdraw it. I wish that would have happened rather than.
You don't know that that didn't happen.
You're right. I don't know that it didn't happen,
Thank you.
but my recollection was that you said that you hadn't talked to him in
That
advance.
was just Kathy.
Okay.
I'm talking about 2 years of conversations.
Okay, so I just. My goal, what happened was the right thing. He withdrew it and we didn't spend money on it. But what I don't like is the discord. And I know there has to be discord and I know there has to be confrontation sometimes, but I just don't like being part of a body that has more confrontation, chaos, discord than I think it needs to, than I think it's healthy. And that's just can't we all get along in my naivete, and I apologize for that.
Can we move on with public comment, please? Is there anyone else?
Yes, Pat Stein is next, followed by Jonathan. Go ahead, Pat.
Good evening. I want to add congratulations to Manager Parker. You've been there 3 months now. You're doing a great job. You know the members of the board's weaknesses and their strengths. And I think you're doing a good job building on both of those areas. I want to thank you and I wish you a happy future with the board. I want to address John Reiser, Trustee Reiser. Trustee Reiser, I think you need to go back and watch probably the last hour of the video of this meeting. I was present until about 20 minutes ago. Fortunately, I got home just in time to hear Kathleen Brandt's excellent report. But Trustee Reiser, I want you to watch your own behavior, because if you really don't care for the conflict and the confrontation, I think you ought to see how you responded. You were actually reprimanding members of the board, female members of the board at that, for the way they handled Will Hathaway's totally fiscally irresponsible behavior. And I want to know too, when is Will Hathaway, our supervisor, who's already bilked us out of $1,800, actually $2,000, when is he gonna pay that back? I mean, when I have a credit card bill due, I pay it. I don't go to other people to pay it because I'm immature in my financial responsibilities. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Good night, good meeting. Take care.
Thank you, Pat. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to say is now it's going to sound like piling on. So, hey, John, I'll give you a call. I kind of see where people are coming from here.
Go pile on
But
privately.
no, I
But the
mean,
way you
look,
like it, John, privately. More polite.
if I said what I was really thinking right now, I don't think anybody'd be loving it. But no, I mean, look, there seems to be and there tends to be a couple of things I've noticed. Number one is folks tend to comment on things based on their surface, not their history or their details. And that's kind of what came out tonight. But really, I think the bigger thing is there seems to be a lot of moralizing. And I've called Donna out on that before when she directs it at Jessica, which is interesting because she only directs it at Jessica. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of felt like that tonight. There was a very clear effort to address this quietly, this financial thing quietly over the last couple of years, and yet the assumption was that this was just this like group attack to get the supervisor when it was an action of last resort after years of trying to address this issue. And that's it. I mean, it's a microcosm of what I've just watched over the last couple of years. Is this like, oh well, the clerk is demanding all these things that she doesn't really need, and oh, the clerk is attacking the supervisor again. No, you don't understand. These folks are professionals. They've been doing the work in the background. And when you see these things flare up in meetings like this, it's because they put in the time behind the scenes trying to resolve them and couldn't. This is a stage of last resort for them. And I just think you should all give each other the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that. Anyhow, that's all. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan. Anyone
Spot
else want
on.
to speak? I see no hands raised.
Motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved by Hathaway, support by Noel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
10:46.